Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith. I've been called a lot worse. Episode 132. Tonight we're going to talk to Andres Quijada. Look forward to it. But a couple announcements. New slogan for the GreatBase Tennis Education nonprofit. Solid fundamentals, strong character. Solid fundamentals, strong character. Says it all. Nonprofit, we have nonprofit status. Donations, if you would go to GreatBase Tennis Facebook, that's one way to find out how to donate. All donations will be spent on improving our delivery system of free educational content. Just trying to do a better job sharing the information that we've gathered over the years. One thing, check out our website. I mean, some of the people obviously know this, our listeners. Tennis Intelligence Supply. It's a 25-hour course. There's 4 other free courses. We have Instagram posts. We have 15 years of daily content on Facebook, and obviously these podcasts. Another announcement, this summer, beautiful place, Mountainside Resort, Wintergreen Resort in Wintergreen, Virginia. Steve Campbell's the tennis director, longtime associate. Most importantly, Steve-O worked for Vic Braden. 3 indoor courts, 16 clay courts, beautiful amenities. You can find out more information about our summer at Wintergreen by also going to GreatBase Tennis Facebook. Davis Cup, shout out, Rob Krajicek, Austin Krajicek, guests on our podcast. Austin wins a match with Rajiv Ram. We don't really have a deep connection with Rajiv Ram, although he did play one semester at University of Illinois, played for one of our students, Craig Tiley, played with another player we worked with to win the NCAAs, Brian Wilson. Mackenzie McDonald, somebody who scored a win for the Davis Cup. One of our longtime associates, Matt Clore, he's spent a lot of time with Mackenzie McDonald. I think we'd have a podcast just on questions I asked Mackenzie McDonald when he stayed with us during the pandemic. Tommy Paul, no connection. All they watched him play, watched him practice many times. Maybe I could ask him if he ever partied with my son, Connor. With our podcast, moving forward, we have 60 plus guests, people that I've asked, hey, would you be a guest on our podcast? But Andres Quijada, I moved him to the front of the line. I was just talking to him. He works with Dave Anderson out in Dallas. And what he had to say about junior tennis, I said, hey, you're the right guy to reinforce the message of solid fundamentals and strong character. Let's get him on the phone. We'll talk about his background in tennis and how he can help us out. As always, if I could just use my phone here. More announcements to follow. Calling Andres from Venezuela. I love you to say that. Venezuela. You can sing that.
Hello.
Andres, welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Yeah. I look forward to having you as a guest. I was just saying I'd love to just say the word Venezuela. I remember the Miss Universe contest. Miss Venezuela. That's about all I got. But let's go start with your beginning days in Caracas. Your start in tennis.
Yeah. I started at age 2 actually. Both of my parents play tennis. My dad was a tennis coach for many years. He coached me from age 2 to 6, around that age, and then he started a job at the Venezuelan Tennis Federation, and I kind of just went to the mini tennis group and grew up from age 6 to 17 at the federation.
And siblings, brothers and sisters?
I have a half brother, older than me, and I have 2 nephews. They actually train at Brookhaven at the moment, and one is 12 and the other one is 14.
For our listeners, Brookhaven, the flagship for Club Corp, based in Dallas, and one of our longtime associates, Dave Anderson, actually Dion Krupi as well. Same era. They've been there for 30 years, I think. Tell us more about tennis in Venezuela. Did you play other sports? Were you a soccer player? Football?
Yeah, so I grew up playing baseball. Baseball and tennis were my first sport. Venezuela, the first sport in Venezuela is actually baseball. A lot of baseball players come out of Venezuela. During the early 2000s, soccer started becoming a lot more popular. So a lot of people, a lot of kids started to play soccer as well. But Caracas is kind of those cities where, kids are always doing sports outside, whether it's, basketball, soccer on the street, or even baseball, throwing, cold caps, trying to hit it with a wooden stick. So it's a very different culture than here. Even now that kids have their phones, you can still go to Caracas and see kids playing on the street. So I got a chance to play baseball, soccer, for fun. It wasn't nothing like I did with tennis, but I definitely was active playing it. But to me, it was something fun for me to do rather than, I wasn't a very academic guy. I didn't really like reading much, so I was always trying to play sports.
With South America, Venezuela, is that really the only country where baseball is a major sport?
I would say, in South America, definitely Venezuela is the number one in baseball.
Years ago, it was always stated that the Americans with baseball, especially, but even football, that would really help with their service motions, but the Europeans and the South Americans, because of soccer, very, very good with their footwork. But it's interesting that really don't think of baseball being played is looked upon as such an American sport. But I know I spent a lot of time in Japan, for example, where it's very popular there. I remember one time being in the Netherlands, and I was so shocked to see these softball fields and girls playing softball. How long did you stay with baseball?
So I played baseball until I was 10. Then my parents couldn't take me anymore because it was so far away from where the tennis courts were. Caracas has very bad traffic, so it was almost impossible to go to both. It was because in Caracas, in Venezuela, you go to school if you're in primary school, you go from 7 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And then usually people do sports like from 3 to 4, they do swimming. And then from 5 to 7, they go to tennis. So their afternoon is wide open and they're able to do, multiple activities. Compared to here where, kids get out of school around 4 o'clock. But the problem with the traffic is that if you're trying to do two sports and the complexes are too far, you can't make it. So I had to pick one. And it was convenient to just stick with tennis because my dad was going to go to the tennis federation every day. So it was one of the things that it makes sense for the logistics of the family every time.
So what about transportation? A bus system or a train? There was no other way to go to baseball other than by car?
It just depends where you live. I grew up in a neighborhood where it's up in the mountains. So taking the bus from there to baseball, it would have taken 2 to 3 hours. So it was not feasible doing that. But there's some people that live more in a central area in Caracas that they have more access to subway or the bus right away. But if you live up in the hills, it's kind of like Austin, like you go up in the hills, like where Austin Tennis Academy is, and then a bus goes by every hour and a half, so you get lucky if you catch a ball. So the logistics there it's a little bit of a problem if you don't have a car.
How about with yourself on the service motion? Not here in this country. I mean, even if you didn't play baseball years ago, you could play baseball. You're always playing catch, and people could throw the ball. But then they would take a tennis lesson. They would be told down together, up together, scratch your back. How about for yourself? Did the baseball help you with your service motion?
Yeah, in fact, when in Venezuela, you see a lot of kids serving like they're going to prepare for an overhead. They go into a quarterback position and then they toss the ball from the palm down, and then they just toss and hit. And I think if you see at least back in my crop, when you see my crop, all of us had good serving motions because we all begin with the serve like that. We basically learned how to hit an overhead first, and then we went to the baseline and just pretend that we were throwing a baseball, and that allowed us to have a low toss. So to your point, I think baseball players have an advantage of when it comes down to the serve.
No, for sure. With Vic Braden used to always tell a story. He was in Argentina working with tennis coaches, and he actually worked with Vilas's coach way back when in the Orange Bowl. Tracy Austin's brother, Jeff Austin. That was the connection. That's how they became, Vilas and Jeff Austin became doubles partners and played the 18s in the Orange Bowl. But Vic, anyway, he told a group of young tennis players from Argentina, he goes, let me just see you play catch. And actually, Vic could speak Spanish. And he was organizing something off to the side of the court. He said, "Okay, guys, just spread out, like see you play catch with the ball." And they formed a circle, and they were playing catch with their feet. They were not using their hands. That was
Wow.
many years ago. But that's but with
yeah, no,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, we're definitely a catch and throw country more than we're with our feet for sure.
Wow. So baseball is actually bigger than soccer in Venezuela.
Baseball is bigger than soccer. Now, I mean, nowadays, it's, a lot of the kids, they play soccer, but definitely still baseball for sure.
So you came up in juniors. Your dad works with the federation. Did the federation have much money? What were the resources like? The facilities?
Well, the federation itself, I couldn't tell you if we had what kind of funding we had, but I can talk to you a little bit about how things work there, and you can kind of understand how it worked for us. We basically had 12 courts, and the way it worked was court 1 to court 5. It was beginner, intermediate kids. So if for example, my dad was always on court 1. He always taught beginners, so he always was on court 1. And then the classes were run by age groups, and the times were set up on age groups, 2 to 4, 4 to 5, and then a little more advanced kids will come 5 to 7. But it went like that: court 1 all the way to 5, and then from court 6 to court 8, kind of like the intermediate advanced. And then the advanced kids were on their stadium court. That's where they used to play the Davis Cup. And then court 9 to 12, all the either full-time kids or the advanced kids. But it's interesting, Steve, because when I first moved to the U.S., I never really seen a Walmart cart filled with tennis balls. And I showed up to PJC, and every court had a cart like Walmart filled with balls. And I was like, wow, it would have been nice to grow up with that many balls. Because the way they use it in Venezuela is they have this hopper. They have the 2 legs, and then you put the 2 legs all the way to the ground, and then the little basket sits up, and they use that as a basket. So, if the coach is feeding balls, there are kids hitting, and all the kids are picking up balls because you couldn't have the kids just standing around, And therefore, by default, the coaches are having the kids to, do different exercises like hit the ball, recover, shot a swing in the back, and then other people jogging to get balls. So the adversity of not having a lot of balls had to develop a system for the coaches to make the tennis class more interesting.
I think with so many balls on a tennis court, actually, for our listeners, when Andre says TJC, we'll talk about Tyler Junior College, 2-year school in East Texas. But I mean, all the balls in a basket, there's positives and negatives. Like in anything, there's always two sides of the story. And I think really kids can become very, very sloppy. There's a lot to be said about, just going out there with 3 to 6 tennis balls. Years ago, there was a tennis camp in France where you and your partner would just share a tennis ball. So basically, it was like you had a half a tennis ball. You'd be just one ball between the two of you. America, we're the land of abundance. I always tell people that the worse the balls, the better the program. There's nothing worse to me than a kid squeezing the ball and go, no, this is not too good. Just grab 3 tennis balls and go. And granted, if they're going to play a match, I can understand why they want to have the best tennis balls possible. I certainly have some stories. We'll talk a little about Dave Anderson. One of his bosses years ago, a guy by the name of Dick Tucker in Longview, Texas, when Dave was first starting out, said that Anderson had a mind like a steel trap. Back in the day, without cell phones, you could memorize. If you want to know someone's phone number, just ask Anderson. But he would always remember this court that someone played on and the score. But yeah, Tyler Junior College with the connections. How did you end up coming from Venezuela to the U.S.? But what I was going to say, my train of thought, senior moment, I have those.
Yeah,
is kids grabbing a tennis ball, squeezing them, and they start hitting them over the fence like they're not good enough. Like we'll just bang these over the fence, and sometimes the first time visitor says, "Hey, go get the ball." Oh, but the ball's terrible. Mm-hmm. No, go get the ball. But go ahead. You had to do pretty well in juniors to end up getting a scholarship to come to the U.S.
So my story is a little bit different than the regular American kid now, because back when I was playing juniors, college wasn't as popular. A lot of my friends and I, our goal was to go pro tennis. Right, we finished high school, and we're gonna go straight to futures and fight the future circuit to see if we could make it. So I finished high school 16 on the verge of 17, and then I just started playing futures and qualifying and money tournaments. It was very hard to play a lot of futures because, as you know, it costs a lot of money to fly from Venezuela to other countries. So I tried to play all the futures that we had in the country. I think it was about 6 or 7 a year. And I mixed it with a lot of money tournaments, adult open tournaments. So I did that for about 2 years. Then I kind of realized that it was getting too difficult for me to go out and play tournaments, and it's a big investment. The economic situation wasn't that good at the time in Venezuela, and my parents couldn't support me at all to become a professional tennis player. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to go play in the United States and get a scholarship. But what I didn't know was that there's such a thing as eligibility. I didn't know anything about NCAA eligibility, TOEFL tests, SATs. I didn't know any of that. And on top of that, I didn't know English. So I went to a friend of mine and I asked him. He actually played at New Mexico State. I'm about to go to his wedding on March 17th. Luis Fernando Ramirez. I asked Luis, I want to go to America, and he laughed and he said, "Man, but you can't speak English." And I said, "Yeah, good point. I'm gonna have to go learn somewhere." So I found a program in Toronto where it wasn't that expensive to go for 8 months, and the visas they were very easy to get. So that's why I consider going to Canada, because the visa process is very easy compared to the U.S. So step by step, I ended up in Toronto, learned English.
So you were what, 17, 18 at that time?
At that time I was 19 when I went to Toronto. Turned 20 in Toronto. Learn English. Didn't do well on the test. I mean, you could imagine, right? You have 8 months deadline to pass the TOEFL, to take the SAT. Then, as I'm sending my applications and, trying to connect with coaches and friends and, people that I know, I found out that I wasn't eligible to play V1. So a couple of friends gave me different emails from junior colleges. I remember I emailed the Temple Junior College coach. I never go back on him, but I had like a week window, Steve, where I needed to get my visa done before January. I had a week, and Dash Cornell, go back to my email, and he's like, "Hey, listen, we have a spot for you. You're on board." And he put me in contact with the people of the international department, and I got all my paperwork. And 5 weeks later, I was at TJC.
To back up a little bit, did you play throughout South America or just in Venezuela before you went to Toronto?
Before I went to Toronto, I went to I played a couple futures outside of the U.S. The Venezuelan Federation had a deal with the government where they had they helped their best 15 players, and they helped them go to a tournament in La Habana, in Cuba. So I was able to go to La Habana and play two ITF tournaments there. It didn't end up well for me, but at least I got the chance to visit and play tournaments and realize that you don't need entry fees to get better. But yeah, no, it was very limited for me to travel and play.
With let's say to go to Argentina or go to Brazil, because of the finances. When you grew up, Hugo Chavez, there was lots of problems with the economy, correct?
Yeah, it was a huge recession since 1999, all the way until now. So it was very difficult for families to send their kids to South America. I mean, just flying to Colombia, it was $1,200. That's like going from Texas to Arizona.
Actually,
and it was just very expensive.
For a 10-year period, I was really the senior citizen. Chad Berryhill, the second 5 years, he did an outstanding job. And I would say that he had autonomy, not when he started, but I was the advisor or director of the team. And one year we had 2 girls from Venezuela. And that was about the same time where Chavez took over, right around the year 2000, I think, correct?
Yeah, 2000 was a tough year.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I spent some time in Orlando. There's so many people from Venezuela. It's such a beautiful country with so many natural resources as well, correct? It's just mismanaged. It's just mismanaged.
Yeah, it's a beautiful country. I wish people that haven't been, they have a chance to visit once it gets a little better to go, and it's definitely a beautiful country. It's warm year round. We have the beach relatively close from the inland, so if you want the beach, you get the beach. If you want to go to the mountains, we have the mountains. We have the desert. We want desert. We have a lot of different type of diversity in terms of environment. But like you said, it's mismanaged, so it's just difficult to develop civilization there.
Well, if you spent 8 or 9 months in Toronto, that must have been a shocker to see the Great White North, see some snow, huh?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, remember the first time I arrived, I never seen the snow before, so I was very happy. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go see the snow. And there was a storm. It was -20 Celsius. I don't know what's that in Fahrenheit, but it was cold. I mean, I
Cold,
never experienced that much cold in my life. And then I think the Olympics, the final, Canada and the U.S. They were playing the final of hockey.
Oh,
I
boy.
never watched hockey before. I ended up loving hockey. I went to a game and I was like, man, this sport is awesome. But yeah, no, it was a definitely culture shock for me. I couldn't believe people live that well. I was like, there's no way you can take a streetcar everywhere and you don't get robbed. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, the quality of life in Canada, the standard of living is actually higher than the U.S. Well, to digress from tennis, that hockey game, the final, the gold medal game, U.S. Canada, the Canadians. I mean, they can really put 3-4 teams together, but the Americans had a great squad. The game went to overtime. Everybody knows Sidney Crosby scored the goal, but what they did, the format, instead of playing 5-on-5 during the overtime, they played 4-on-4. Now during the regular season, what they're doing is playing overtime 3-on-3. Playoffs will play 5-on-5. But anytime you put 4-on-4, 3-on-3, it favors the superstars. So I can remember as soon as the overtime started, I was watching on TV, I just yelled many times, no, no, no. But not long after that, I was in Toronto running a workshop with players, parents, and coaches. And I just remember saying, if it was 5-on-5, the Americans would have won. And the group of Canadians just looked at me like I just said the worst thing in the world. But tell us about getting to Texas. I mean, I always tease, I lived in Texas for 10 years and I love Texans. They've got the great missionary zeal. But I've always said, I really enjoyed living outside of the United States for such a long period of time. It's a country unto itself. What about coming to Texas?
Yeah, Texas, it was interesting because, coming from Venezuela, that is a hot country, the last state that I put on my list, it was Texas. That's how life is. I wrote it down. I said, Texas is the last state I'm going to go because I don't want to be in the heat. And I ended up here because it was the only opportunity that I had. So when I arrived to Tyler, when you come from a place like Venezuela and you never really travel the world, you think the United States is basically like New York City, Chicago, all those big cities, right? And I just came from Toronto. So I'm thinking like, yeah, Texas, I mean, you're in America, it should be like Toronto, right? Low buildings and, crowded. And I arrived to Tyler, and that was after I took a little plane from Dallas. And I was convinced that I took the wrong plane. I was like, I don't think this is the right place. I thought I took the wrong plane to a different country or something like that. Because I've never seen such a country area. But no, yeah, I mean, Dash was there waiting for me, picking me up at the airport, and I was just happy that I ended up in the right place.
Well, Tyler has certainly built up over the years, but small place, 70,000 people when I was there. Yeah, lots of trees, and you're out at the airport, you probably think you're in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Yeah, no, it got better as I drove into the city. I was like, oh, okay. So it is more developed, it is bigger. It's just like the airport there is small. So it kind of gave me the feel that it was a smaller place. But Tyler is big now.
Yeah, lots of positives with a city that size. It's not too big, but you pretty much have quite a few things in place. What about the English, climbing that ladder? Did you take some rudimentary developmental classes? How did that go?
So when I first started at TJC, I arrived with a bad TOEFL score. I think I scored like 42 on the TOEFL. That's the worst I ever seen it. Like even the players that I had in my experience coaching college tennis, I never seen a score that bad. So I had to take the ACT as soon as I go to TJC. And I mean, I think I did bad too because I ended up in like all the remedial classes you could take. I took. So I basically started from scratch everything, Steve.
And some of those classes obviously are not transferable, correct? So you weren't building up credits. Is that right?
No, those classes weren't. No, you have to pass those classes to get into the actual like English 101, math 101, things like that.
But no, I think that's America, the land of opportunity. Is it gives you a chance. That's one thing that in some countries it's not so user friendly that you can start and climb your way up academically.
Absolutely, and all the resources there. One thing I enjoy is how systematic it was as soon as I go to TJC. We had practice, study hall, training room. You know how the life is of a college athlete, and that worked for me. I mean, I never done good in school until I moved to America. It was amazing. It was like I don't know how this is possible. And I was successful at it because it was systematic. You go to study hall, you sit in the library, you study. Coach Peterson, made sure that we did our school. And it was just easy. Once the freshmen figured out the schedule, by the third, fourth week, we had it down. So in that sense, that really helped me. Having a system to learn English better, to make sure I had the classes, and then focus on tennis.
Well, for our listeners, Tyler Junior College, great tradition. John Peterson was the third coach. I think now they're just on their fourth coach. But there's a long list of great players that went to Tyler Junior College, and they won so many national championships. What was it like playing for Coach Peterson? He was your coach both years?
So when I go to TJC, Coach Pearson was still the head coach, and I got there during the spring. So my first month, Coach Peterson calls me and he says, "Hey Andres, we have to do your eligibility because you're only going to be able to play 1 year junior college. So you're going to have to decide soon. Do you want to play this spring, or you want to wait, and then you can play for the fall and then the spring?" And I was like, "Well, Coach Pete, I think I'm going to wait and, get adapted, get used to, the system here, and then play the fall and the spring." And also he said I could work the summer camp with them. So that was a plus. I ended up doing that too. So I had to wait 1 semester. So I still did everything that a player, normally do. Go to practice every day, study hall, everything like if I was part of the team, right? So I go to train a lot and get better to get ready for the fall.
And was he the coach throughout your tenure there?
So he decided to retire after that season, and then Dash Cornell took the position of head coach. So Dash was my coach for my fall and spring season.
But he was already there as an assistant, correct?
Yes, Dash was assistant at the time, yeah.
And he's been there a long time now. I mean, so many years now. Has he been there ever since Peterson retired, right?
Yeah, Dash has been the head coach since fall 2011, I think.
I was working there when Peterson was hired, and he was a very successful high school coach in San Antonio. I'm going to guess the name of the school was Churchill. But yeah, I mean, I would say that he's a player's coach, and I got to spend more time around him years later when I was involved with a junior college team in Florida. Didn't really get to know him the short time that he was just there a semester before I left. But yeah, I know he was really well liked, well respected by his players. Yeah,
he was very tough on us. I remember one time I was walking going to the cafeteria, and I never really buy jeans and buy pants, so I always wore the same jeans, the same pants ever since high school. And I was losing so much weight that my pants were loose, and as I was walking, my pants were falling down. And Coach Peterson chased me and grabbed me behind, and he said, "You have to wear a belt." and pulled my pants up. And next day I went to Walmart and I got a belt, and I made sure that didn't happen again. But Coach Pete was strict; he was fair. But yeah, we were all intimidated by him for sure.
Well, he was an athlete. I know that. I think he's from Iowa. Was a wrestler. Was a football player. Played multiple sports. And like myself, I think that many of the people that got into tennis based on the tennis boom that took place in the 70s were individuals that played multiple sports and came from different cultures. They weren't just tennis people. I think in today's American tennis scene, most of the people that get into coaching, that's perhaps the only sport that they've known is just tennis. But I think anytime you could deal with a wrestler, I would guess that John Peterson at that time would still, close to retirement, would still be able to do all the physical workouts with you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Coach Pete, I bet until today he still looks fit. Yeah, I mean, he was fitter than a lot of the guys in the team.
Yeah, no, he came in, and certainly at that time there's two factions. The tennis tech program revised that in 1981. It was a general recreation curriculum where there was only one tennis class a semester, but then we made it a comprehensive program. It was Eugene Allen, the president of the board of trustees. I didn't know at age 26 how much power he actually had, but he had developed a program for dental hygienists, and he was the one that said, hey, we could really step this up. And but no, he certainly, I think with Dave Anderson and others being in Texas, I think over the years he probably realized what happened, the time I was there. But he wouldn't have known that coming in because the faction, the group of people who hired him were really opposed to tennis tech, just small town politics. I always tell people you can learn so much being in a small town. In that sense, I consider Tyler at that time a small town. Politically, if you could survive in a small town for 10 years. I'm from New York. I'm a hick, not a slick, but I can remember the first person I met, a guy named Bob Caudell. He became a great friend of the program, and he said, son, where are you from? And I said, New York. And he said, you'll never make it in this town. But with the tennis, did you move on to another school right after that, or did you get into the working world?
So that spring when I got there, I had to get a job to help my parents pay for my school. I was supposed to have some sort of scholarship, but that spring, because I wasn't playing, I didn't have any, so I had to help my parents pay for, which it wasn't that much money, but for us it was. So I started working in the rec center. I think they pay like $8 to $7 an hour, and I did hitting lessons in TJC and outside of TJC. Then I got like a weekend gig in Crown Colony Country Club, and I did that the weekends that I wasn't traveling, because I had to do it. I mean, I wouldn't survive TJC if I wouldn't get a job. So it was basically, I was full-time student, working as much as I could in the rec center and doing lessons, hitting lessons at TJC, or driving all the way to Lufkin, Texas, which is 2 hours, an hour and 45 minutes. Not really sure now. To work in the weekends and then come back to school on Monday. And I did that pretty much my whole time there. So April, the following spring, my friend that was the assistant head pro at Crown Colony was gonna leave, and he told me, "Hey Andres, do you want to take this job?" And I was like, "Well, if they can hire me with a student, with a student visa, I'll do it in a heartbeat." And Karen Crompton at the time was a head pro there, so she said, "Absolutely, come here and do the best you can." So I kind of managed my time with, PJC, the Coon, on my other job, and trying to go to Lufkin during the weekends to build a clientele, and then do that. And once I finished that last semester in May, I completely moved to Lufkin and did that job full time at Crown. And I was doing all the paperwork to transfer to Stephen F. Austin just to be a regular student, because the schools that I was talking to at the time to transfer to play NAIA or Division II, even though with the scholarship they were giving me, it was so expensive. I was going to go to school in Philadelphia, Westmont Hill College. My friend was playing there at the time, and he introduced me to the coach, and the coach ended up liking me and offered me a good scholarship. But because it was a private school, it was so expensive for my parents to pay, so I just couldn't do it. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna work a lot and try to pay for my own school at SFA. And that's when I met Stephanie. My wife, she's the head coach at SFA at the time, and she was needing an assistant coach, and she asked me, hey, do you want to be my assistant? I'll help you pay for your school. And I was like, man, I'll take it, So I went straight to college tennis as a coach in the women's side that year.
Yeah, we'll have to ask you about Stephanie. I never made it to Nacogdoches. It's Nacogdoches, right?
Yeah, Nacogdoches.
I had been in Lufkin. One of my students, David Wiest, he became the tennis director there. I don't tell too many stories about my playing days. I was short-lived because I was so competitive. I had to really stop playing. When I was at Tyler Junior College, we, the tennis tech students, were second-class citizens. So I got there pretty young, and I'm practicing every day. And I played at a level where I could have been on the tennis team in the lineup type thing. You can just go out and play the boys. And I remember Scotty Perelman. He had one of the TJC guys, and they won the Big Eight. And his number 6 guy was somebody that I used to practice with when he was a player at TJC early on. But I played a match in Lufkin. I should be able to tell you the name of the guy. He was a good 35s player. And he was the coach at UTEP. And I lost the first set, but I could just tell he was a little bit tired. And I said, okay, I'm just going to keep balls in play. And he had to stop in the third set. And I asked him to go in and, why don't you come on in and I'll buy you something to drink. And all these stories. Ben Shelton, obviously did so well at the Aussie Open. Todd Wiskin, I get that right, Todd Wiskin. Maybe I'm mispronouncing it. He beat Connors. That was the day he beat Connors at beat Connors at the U.S. Open. And Todd, he died of cancer at a very young age. But that's one thing about Ben Shelton. Not only on his father's side, Brian, but with his mother's side of the family. But anyway, I came out after that match, and the guy I played was being taken off, and he was in an emergency cot that they put in the back of an ambulance, and it was packed with ice. But that's the story I tell people, is that you got to learn to keep the ball in play. But that's one thing about Texas, I think worse than Florida, is Houston is a tough place to be. East Texas, same thing. The humidity is just unbelievable. The foreign players would come over to TJC in the fall, and you wouldn't know how good they were for the first month because the climate, they had such a difficult time adjusting to the climate. But tell us a little about Nacogdoches. Your wife was the assistant coach, so you became the volunteer, is that right?
No, she was the head coach, and
the head
she
coach,
made an
wow.
assistant. Yeah, she was the head coach, and she made an assistant coach, and I became assistant.
Oh, okay. I thought that I didn't think she was a head coach till she got to New Mexico. So
she was head coach of Lee College first. Then she got an assistant job at SFA, and she became the head coach at SFA. And then for an SFA head coach, she went to be the assistant at Houston.
Okay.
Then from Houston, she went to Brookhaven. Then from Brookhaven, she went to be the head coach at University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. And then from Rio Grande Valley, she went to be the head coach at New Mexico. So we've been all over the place, Steve.
But she started at Brookhaven at a really young age, and that's where she learned how to play, right?
Yeah, she started hitting balls at Brookhaven at the wall, hitting that wall. In fact, Dave Anderson told a story about her today, how Stephanie hit that wall every single day. She plays two hands on both sides, and she just hit that ball back and forth.
Yeah, Dave says that Dion Krupe was the go-to guy. Helped her so much with her game when she was younger.
Yeah, Dion did.
So her journey in tennis, your journey in tennis. She also works at Brookhaven now.
Yes, she's a tennis coach at Brookhaven, and she also works in the office with used to be with Billy and Dave Ware. Since Billy retired now, she's working with Dave Ware.
They're talking about college coaching in the private sector, with a big difference, obviously, or maybe some similarities. So how many years were you collectively? I mean, she was a college coach, and now she stepped down. How many years was she a college coach? How many years were you a college coach?
She was 3 years in New Mexico, 1 year at UTRUV, 1 year in Houston, 2 years at SFA, and then I believe 1 year at Lee College. And then I did a year at SFA. Didn't volunteer for Houston. The volunteer at the time at Houston was Daniel Whitehead, former Texas Tech men's head coach. And then I was the volunteer assistant at UTRGV when she was the head coach. And then I was the volunteer assistant at New Mexico for the men for 3 years.
And what did you major in at TJC? And then also you got a degree from Stephen F. Austin?
So I didn't finish my degree in Stephen F. Austin. When you apply for a visa in junior college, they only give it to you for 3 years. So I was in like my last year of getting the visa, and I didn't have enough credits to graduate. So I had to stop my education and figure out my paperwork to be able to go back to school and be eligible to study. So I had to wait. I waited until our first year at UTRUV to reapply again and transfer. By that time, there was a big gap, so a lot of my credits didn't transfer. And my degree was international business at SFA and business at TJC. But I ended up graduating with an economics degree at New Mexico, which I think that was the best thing that happened to me, because by that time my English was much better. I was, more mature. I was way older. I had a little bit more experience on knowing the world and understanding what I wanted to do and how I understood, the labor market. So econ was my way to go, and I ended up graduating from New Mexico.
So when you were at Tyler Junior College, Andres, did you have anything to do with the tennis teaching program?
No, I didn't do tennis tech. No, I did work in the summer camp, but I wasn't part of. I have friends that were part of the tennis tech, but I wasn't ever part of it.
And your wife going to Purdue, did she become an engineer? I always think of people who go to Purdue, they study engineering.
I know. No, she did business. She played number one at Purdue. Got knee surgery in both, not knee surgery, ankle surgery, and in both ankles. So I had to take an extra year, redshirt for that year, and then I think it took her five years.
No,
to
for our
finish school.
listeners, the two of you, I mean, obviously, your thoughts on college tennis, and then thoughts on leaving the two of you leaving college tennis and now being in the private sector.
Yeah, it's everything in life is there's a trade off, right? There's pros and cons. There's always going to be that. Um, I feel like for her, um, that dream to be a head coach and be at a better school and start to run a bigger program, it was always there. And she ended up getting the head coaching job at New Mexico after winning the WAC conference for UTRGV. It was the first WAC conference title for the history of the school, and Stephanie got it with her team. And that same summer, New Mexico called and asked her to be the head coach, and that was going to be the next job to get her to a better school. So she asked me, "Hey, what do you think?" I said, "Hey, I'll do whatever it takes to become the best we can be, and if New Mexico is a place to be, let's go." She was actually recruiting in Spain, and I couldn't go to that trip because I was still waiting for my visa. So she told me, "Okay, we move next week." So I had to pack all the stuff at the apartment at UTR in McAllen, Texas. I have everything ready to when she come back from Spain. We had to drive the truck all the way to Albuquerque.
I've only driven through Albuquerque several times, but I've had no experiences in New Mexico. I've coached some kids from New Mexico that have come to visit. Actually, I remember working with a young girl, rodeo cowgirl, say it correctly. I always think of the TV show Breaking Bad, the television series.
Yeah.
Or during the pandemic,
Yeah.
Andy Fitzell said, "You got to watch this." I said, "Well, how long is it?" And he said something like 43 hours. I said, no. But anyway, that's my connection with Albuquerque is I became a Breaking Bad fan. Was Tim Cass the athletic director when you were there?
Yes, I want to say he was, and then he left. Steve, I don't know. Did Tim Cash later become something with the USTA?
Yeah, no, he was the GM of Lake Nona. I think he's still involved with the USTA, but he crossed over and now he's just has something to do with.
No, actually, Tim Cash wasn't when my first semester when I go there. No, he was gone. Yeah.
I've only met Tim a handful of times, but I was told that he was instrumental in rebuilding the athletic facility, leading that mission to. What was the athletic facility like at University of Mexico?
Well, when my first semester there, the McKinnon Tennis Center was just finished. It was built by the McKinnon family.
Yeah.
It's a business family. I think Mr. McKinnon, he runs the hedge fund for Roger Federer, if I'm not mistaken. I can get back into you and verify that, but it has something to do with with financial planning or money management with Federer, and he donated the money to build a tennis facility, and they built a very nice one. They have 6 nice outdoor courts, and then they have of course a bubble, because as you know it gets cold there in Albuquerque, so we play inside a lot. So they have the old facility outdoor 6 courts. They have the bubble 6 courts, and then they have the brand new McKinnon facility 6 courts as well. But it's beautiful. It's next to the baseball field, and you can see the mountains from the tennis facility. It's beautiful there.
I think that's one of the reasons Tim Cass got the job as a GM. I mean, obviously, people skills are always in the equation, but besides that, a tennis background. I know he was a coach at A&M before New Mexico, but yeah, I think that he led the their, the mission of rebuilding their athletic facility. And I think that, he was part of Lake Nona when the bulldozers were there building that facility. But in between all this, you spent time in the business world, correct?
Yeah. So after I graduated, well, during that particular time, I had a summer job where I was a head pro at the Bay Head Yacht Club in Bay Head, New Jersey. So I got to network there, and I had a client who worked at Goldman Sachs at the time, and I made the connection there with the Goldman people, and I started doing a lot of interviews with Goldman Sachs. It took a long time, honestly, the whole hiring situation, but it didn't work out. It didn't work out with that connection. So my wife Stephanie knew a family that we used to teach when we were back in Brookhaven, that she worked for Goldman Sachs as well in Dallas, and I ended up getting a job with at her office in the financial planning department.
And did you like that?
Completely different. To be honest with you, I'm the kind of guy that I've always gonna love tennis more than anything. But I like challenges. Right? If it's something new and something that I have to learn, and I'm always in, and I'll do the best of my ability to become the best. So I never came to work like, oh man, I hate this job. In fact, because I knew I was so bad at it, I mean, I go to the office at 5 a.m. and then I will leave at 11 p.m., every day. Because I was trying to become just as good as a tennis coach. Because in my mind, I was like, man, if I don't master this, if I don't become just as good as I am in tennis, then what's the point? What's the point of me doing it? So I treated like, I was very competitive. I was like, I have to be the first one going to the office, and I got to be the last one. That was my mentality. I didn't stay there for different reasons, but I didn't dislike it. I was just trying to be competitive and learning. It's a lot of information when you go from teaching tennis your whole life to doing financial planning and taxes and investments and asset management and things like that. It's different. It's a different world that you have to learn. But I definitely learned a lot. Definitely became more professional and more aware of the world. My customer service became a lot better than it used to be. It was a great experience for me.
That's customer service. Always trying to give people added value to try to exceed expectations. I think that's where, with parents listening, that tennis is a vehicle, and you put all this energy and learn to compete in tennis. That's where it's labeled a life skill and will serve you well when you take on another endeavor. With so back to the question on the private sector, to your wife to do the hard yards, and actually, where is Lee College? For our listeners, there's about 5,000 colleges in the U.S.
Lee College is in Baytown. It's in the Houston area.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, it's a place I've never been, but yeah, it's a junior college, correct?
Junior college, yeah.
Yeah, I remember meeting the coach there years ago, and they were pretty competitive at one point in the junior college.
Yeah,
ranks.
they were. Stephanie had a good team. Yeah. I don't know if they beat Tyler, but they were good.
How about going way back in the chat here? How did your team do that spring season when you played at Tyler?
So my first semester, my both times we lost in the final. The year before I got there, they were champions, so we went to defend the title, and we couldn't do it, and then we lost in the final the year after. But it was very competitive. So my situation at TJC, it was I started as number one player in the fall. I played fly one. for most of the tournaments that I play. And then because the team was so big, I mean, we had 14 guys, I think, and we were all pretty even. And the way the coach used to set up the round robins was, okay, every week you're gonna play somebody different, and based on that, I'm gonna do the lineup. So I'm just gonna speak the truth, right? We're going through all these matches, and you know, I win all my matches in my round robin, and because I was the older player in the team, I used to, you know, be close with Dash. I would, you know, take care of his dog when he was gone in trips, and you know, help him out with stringing and doing a lot of things. When I wasn't playing in the lineup, I will help the guys coaching on the side, things like that. So he asked me, like, hey, what do you think the lineup should be? And I said, Dash, I don't know. I think all of us, we don't really have like a chip on our shoulder. We will play wherever you put us, you know. So I don't know how it was the rules at junior college, how much you could change the lineup. D1, you only can change it 1 to 2 spots. I don't know how it worked then, but it was very different. That spring when I play, I think I remember my first match, I must have played 5 or 6, and I think I lost that match. And then I lost, and then that's like, okay, you're not good enough. You're out. Next guy in, right? Because there's too many players. So it was kind of like that. It was on and off the lineup. And then close to nationals, that's when I got the job in Lufkin. And I mean, I told Ash, hey, I don't think I can afford to finish the season. Like financially, I cannot do it. I have to pay for school. I have to pay for my food. Like I have so many bills. I can't do it. So he's like, okay, let's do this. Just come whenever you can, whenever you you can travel. Just let me know what you can do. So my situation there was he gave me that flexibility because he knew I was in that position where I couldn't just be a normal student and a tennis player. Like I had to face life, you know. Like, hey, you have all this to pay. You have to make it. And that's how it went, you know, straight to Crown Colony and Stephen F. Austin. Like that was actually a saving for me because I don't think I would have been able to pay for school or even maintain my immigration status.
I had a conversation with Tennis Mom today. This tournament, it's been a chapter in my life here, going to the Battle of Boca almost every weekend, a UTR tournament. And there's so many things to say about that. But, you know, right around the corner, there's a Panera. Now, over the holidays, I mean, one gift I received was a $100 gift certificate at Panera. The other one was a $50 gift certificate. So, you know, I'm in there with the kids, and it's so expensive. And, you know, sometimes the kids, you know, rain delays or they're there all day. You know, it's like brown bag, make a peanut butter sandwich. And, you know, it's also they're overloading on carbs. But it's just amazing the money that the kids are spending. But no, when I think of junior college tennis, I mentioned that just today to a player who was 11.8 on the UTR, and then, you know, even Division III, that they just turn their nose up at Division III and in junior college tennis. I was listening to a podcast earlier today with Lubacek. One of my friends was a war refugee, so I'm very interested in listening to what Lubacek has to say and his story. And this friend was a war refugee with him, and he said that kids today, they don't even watch tennis. You know, as Lubacek said, they don't sit and watch a match. You know, they don't sit in the stadium, sit on the bleachers on TV. They don't watch a match, and it makes it much more difficult to coach. But no, I think it's great for our listeners to hear the struggles, because I've coached so many kids where they just have that little plastic card. I know you're around that all the time now. That you know, nice kids, but they just have no idea. And you know, also too is that tennis is so international, and they don't really have the exposure. You know, a lot of American kids traveling around the world playing ITFs. They don't realize there's a lot of kids that can't go to those ITFs, but
Mm-hmm.
so they're, you know, the rankings, you know, someone's playing a level 3 ITF and they're traveling all over the world. And, you know, once someone turns 19, you play everybody, and there's people that hang in there, and there's people that have become really good players that have never even left their country.
Mm-hmm.
With
Yeah, my crop is the biggest example, Steve. The people that I grew up with, we were a tight crowd. We were good boys. Um, but we were never like, one of those kids that we were like, oh, I'm better than you. I'm not gonna go play a match with you. We kind of had each other, and we were always going to play a full match. I mean, I remember every Saturday I would go and play my friend Ernesto 2 out of 5 sets. And I loved playing Ernesto because I knew he loved it. So, I mean, this guy loved playing 2 out of 5. And we would think that we were in US Open, playing 2 out of 5 sets and court 10 at the Venezuelan Federation on a Sunday, when nobody was there. And, you don't see that anymore. Everything has to be a lesson. Everything has to be a private lesson. Everything has to be a project. Like, I wanted to be a professional tennis player. I was involved in a good environment to become a great athlete. But my parents and I didn't treat it like a project. I mean, my mom didn't care what I did. She just wanted to make sure I did school. She didn't care if I ran 20 laps and did 300 baskets of serve. She could care less. Same with my dad. My dad was just grinding hours from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. He was like Dave Anderson, teaching red ball kids. So when you're in an environment like that, you just play because you love it, and you hope that because you play and you love it, one day you have the chance to become a professional tennis player. That's how we did it. And some of us, made it to very good ranking. Some of us go to have a few ATP points, and some they were close. But we all had the chance to play D1, and we were good enough to play D1. We just, one didn't know English, two didn't really have the channels to help us figure out what we needed to do, and get resources, right? Because you can have all those first ones, but if you don't have the money to pay for the visa, if you don't have the money to pay for the flight, how are you even going to get to the States, right? And men's don't have full scholarships, so the parents are going to have to come up with, the insurance and the other 30%. And so it's never like, oh yeah, you're gonna get a scholarship, you're gonna go to the States and pay nothing. That doesn't work that way.
well, the typical American kid, they're already on that 10-digit scholarship. You just call home. I mean, they're already on a scholarship. That appreciation. Great kids, but just take a lot of things for granted.
Well, and it's the environment, right? Like they don't have that kind of perspective, right? They don't know what they don't know, and I have this conversation every day with the kids, and I try to explain to them, not really my struggle, because Steve, honestly, I didn't really think it was a struggle to run from my house to practice an hour and 20 minutes jogging with my racket, and then come back and do the same. I actually thought it was fun. I didn't think it was like, oh man, I'm struggling, my life sucks. That wasn't the case, right?
No, probably the best thing for me anyway, the Australian Open, the men's final, during the ceremony, the presentation of the trophies and the checks, where Novak Djokovic said, "So you're so blessed to be disadvantaged." The biblical comment, thought. The less you have, the more you have. Again, the land of abundance.
Right. And there's always going to be somebody that have it worse than you. Like, I have friends that they had it. I mean, Edward, the Espinosa's brother, man, those guys had it tough. Like, that's a different story. And these two guys were good. I don't really remember when Edward went to play here in the U.S. But I mean, Edward was playing college tennis, and he got a job at a Chinese restaurant washing dishes. The guy did that for 3 years, washing dishes at a Chinese restaurant. and he was playing full time in the team, you know.
Oh, it's, you look
And
back, what are you proud of? I went to a pretty posh, exclusive prep school. Years ago, we would say it was a postcard. Now you would say the campus is a screensaver. But before I went, I was a dishwasher. I remember my father, the old man, saying, "Now you'll see what it's like on the other side of the tracks." I have housed tennis kids for a long time now, and it's amazing to watch kids wash dishes for their first time. You could just tell they haven't picked up weeds. They just don't know how to get their hands dirty. So for the parents listening, chores, uh, you know, just stop and slow down and go, wait a minute. It's not a matter of just hitting cross courts or taking another tennis lesson. Is your kids need to have that exposure, perspective to working with their hands. The expression "getting your hands dirty."
yeah, one of the best lessons um, that a kid could have is, get a job, go work for 3 months. Dave Anderson and I were talking about it this week. Go work at McDonald's for 3 months,
Yeah,
and then come back, and then that's your lesson.
yeah. No, I have three students who I've preached. They actually have done that. There's a girl from Montreal that I've worked with who currently is working at McDonald's. So that would be four. Um, I would think that someone would say, "I'm going to take the summer and just work at McDonald's." That would make them a better tennis player than playing in, another summer of tournaments. The years ago, people just didn't play as many tournaments. They didn't travel as much. It was just different. When I grew up, and Dave Anderson's almost 10 years younger than I am, but I'd say, brought up by the same generation. People say the greatest generation in America. With that, some of the values have just gone away. So it's really not the kids' fault. You can't really blame the parents. It's just society. When I was a
Hmm.
kid, if you were 16 years old, even the wealthy kids, and I was not a silver spooner by any means, but if you were 16 years old and you didn't have a summer job, it was not cool. I remember prior to being 16, I used to go to hockey school in Toronto, and I can remember, the kids who continued to go, which was really much a plus for them. And I played prep hockey with, I remember a couple of players that, their parents could afford to take a apartment in Boston, and they're playing two leagues. They're on the ice twice a day. And, but somehow with the kids playing full-time tennis, the parents, they can be homeschooled and practice twice a day, but somehow they need to find a way to have their kid, have that real world mentality. I mean, I've learned so much from parents. I think of one parent who created a point system for their child to earn entry fees. You have to do all these different chores, and you want to play in the tournament. We have to keep track of what do you do to play in that tournament. I think most parents are just crossing their fingers, and especially people that are not taught solid fundamentals. The parents are just crossing their fingers, and they hope that the next tournament's going to be different. And I do think a lot of club pros are always saying tournaments, 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 because they really don't work on the weekends either. More tournaments is not really the solution. And I think
Yeah,
also too is that the parents are really worried about the rankings and the points and getting into the tournaments, and it is true that if you're off the grid and you're not acquiring enough points, you won't be able to get into such and such tournament. That's one of the beauties of the UTR is that I don't think a young, say on the boys' side with Kalamazoo or the girls' side with San Diego, I don't think that you have to. Casey Curtis said that you don't have to. I don't know, a guest we had a couple weeks ago doesn't, it's not like, well, you're ranking. Is, what's your skill set, what's your character, and, if you have the wins, you may not have the points, but if you can play the tournaments and get the wins, and did you played this guy, played that guy. I mean, one thing for our listeners too is that, the college coaches with savvy, they can look at your child's, their career path, how many tournaments they've played, most importantly, how many times have they pulled out of a back draw. It's just
yeah,
amazing how many kids don't play back draws, and those are really the character matches.
Steve, one thing that going to what you're saying about the tournaments, one thing that made me realize that I needed time, it was switching from two-handed backhand to one-handed backhand. So, at age 10, I mean, believe it or not, in Venezuela, 10 and under is so competitive and it's so toxic. The bubble of 10 and under is like the most toxic one. And so competitive, everybody national championships and like they have the Masters in November. It was a big deal, and I played a lot of tournaments, and I was one of the top players in 10 and under in my country, and play. You don't really get to train that much when you play in tournaments because they don't play it during the weekend. They play during the week. So let's say, I have a state championship in Caracas. Well, you get out of school at 1:30, my match is at 4. You can't go to practice. You have to get ready and go to the match. And if you win, you play on Tuesday. And if you win, you play on Wednesday. So you're not really training. Your training is a max. So when I switched to one-handed backhand, I couldn't hit a backhand to save my life. I was slicing every ball, and I was like, wait a minute, this is not working out. I'm not going to go play a match and slice every ball. What's the purpose of switching to a one-handed backhand, right? So I need time. So I start by default, right? Like nobody really managed my career. My dad wasn't telling me this. My mom wasn't telling me that. And my coaches weren't either. I was just like, you know what? I'm stopping. I'm trying to figure out how to hit a one-handed backhand better. And it took me a good 2 years. My last year of 12, I was finally like, okay, I figured this thing out. I tried every single grip, 1, 2, 3, 4. I tried every single path with a one-handed backhand. Everything you could imagine. I copy all the backhands. And once that Federer came to the picture, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm copying this guy. This is what I'm going to do. Federer it is. And then I just started copying him. And one day he went in. I was like, okay, now let's play. And that's what saved me, to develop my game. And a lot of kids, they don't really get to see that because everything is a tournament. Everything is a ranking, UTR. I got to be a, 5-star. I got to be a blue chip.
Yeah, the one-handed backhand with Brookhaven, amazing facility, and it's been, amazing what Dave Anderson, as the lead on-court coach has accomplished. And his record speaks for itself. But my son, I was going through divorce, and at that time, I had him set up, my youngest son Connor, to go to Europe. But fair enough. My former wife said, "Well, is there some place that you could go in the States?" And Dave Anderson and I thought, okay, same message, different messenger. But during that time, he was in the 14s, and he changed from a one-hander to a two-hander. And there's no answer. You can only speculate. I would have liked to seen him stay with a one-hander because, I think with speed, not being the side-to-side player is go forward and make the difference from the service line in. But that's a topic in itself. Should you play one-handed or two-handed? There's just so many issues with that. The return to serve versus the approach shot. And we just talk about players in general. But that's a very difficult change. Do you have to make a grip change on it at any time in your career?
Steve, I think I hit the ball with every single grip until I figured out how to win better. And I was that kind of guy, growing up in the federation, it's not a very systematic place to learn how to play tennis. It's a very good place to develop an athlete. They work very hard. Fitness is great because we used to have Cubans running our fitness there, guys that did the Olympics. And, they were specialists in fitness. So our practice was designed on, a lot of footwork drill, a lot, mainly footwork. And, the strokes will come with the footwork. So that's kind of how we learn how to play. And we were trying, to copy things, to experiment. So going back to your question, I begin with a week one. Then I used to like Albert Costa, and I started copying him. I think I switched to the pure drive for like a year, and there's no way I could have made the ball over the net with topspin on a week one. Every ball would fly with the pure drive. So I was like, man, I'm just gonna move a little bit to the left side of one and just rip topspin vertical. And that's how I kind of played for a long time. And by the time I was 17, I met Jonathan Medina, who Jonathan was top 200 in the world at the time. He was playing Victor Estrella in a challenger, and he got injured in that match and couldn't play at that level again. So I hired him to be my coach for almost 2 years. And he was the one that organized my technique. I think that was like my first 2 years doing like actual strokes,
It's interesting to hear you say Cuban trainers, and you think of how Hugo Chavez was such a fan of Fidel Castro. But the Olympic movement, I would think that just the trainers were very, very tough. I mean, obviously, Spartan, from the book Amazing Racers, Bill Ayers, stoic and Spartan.
Oh, it was very hard.
I think it must have been very, very tough because, the gyms, I would think every gym in Havana is like a Rocky Balboa gym. With, actually being in Canada as an American, and I mean, I grew up just miles away from Canada as a kid, but then to go back from a tennis standpoint years later, and in Canada, you see the billboards on the motorway, on the highway, and it says, visit Havana. But, there was a boycott forever, so you would never see a billboard like that in the U.S. Now, let me ask you, just get way back off of, get off the track of tennis with, was told in Cuba that so many of the Catholic churches became government buildings. What happened with the Catholic churches in Venezuela?
Yeah, we still have them.
Yeah.
We still have them. They're still involved. I went to a Catholic private school, so they're still there.
But that's where it's interesting. I'm always thinking of the Polish people, how during Soviet regime, that they fought and they fought for this and they fought for that, but they definitely fought for Catholicism. With again, back to the private sector. If you had to flip a coin, you said obviously and I like how you said there's a trade-off. For example, why would your wife have worked all those years to climb up to be at a major university like the University of New Mexico, be the head coach, and then take another career path?
I think it was a combination too. The dream of working at a better school, it was always there, but at the same time, I have my own opinion about going back to college. I had that thing about finishing school, right? And I'm going to coach college with her as a head coach. It was gonna help me finish school. So that was also part of the plan. It wasn't just a one-way thing. So kind of like as soon as I graduated, we talk about what we want to do. Do we want to continue to go to in the college path, or we go back to the private sector? And me wanting to explore the financial sector, it was going to be tough to move to a school where jobs in the financial sector were available. So moving to Dallas was like the safe bet for us.
Okay. Dallas versus Albuquerque. I go to Dallas now.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe how big Dallas is. I mean, it's like a country unto itself.
It's huge.
It's just amazing. Well, but again, the University of New Mexico, and certainly, people could make a vertical move from there, but that's a type of job where that can be a really good 30-year job. Being on a college campus, working with young people, the salary, the benefits, the perks. does your wife miss college coaching? I mean, I'm sure she misses it to a certain extent, but
Yeah, I think she does. She does miss it. She's very competitive by nature, so I think sometimes she misses that fire. Um, but also, I think it's hard when you have kids now to be a head coach and be traveling every weekend.
yeah.
So I think the way we have it here, we live very close to Brookhaven. I mean, we can take the golf cart to the club. It's very convenient.
Your
And
daughter is just a toddler, right? Is a young kid.
yes, yeah, one year old.
Lefty or righty?
Yeah, riding.
All right.
We think. We think.
Um,
She grabs the racket and she grunts.
um,
Yeah.
with your bio or with your resume, tell me a little about, or tell the listeners about Sammy Giamalva. What an amazing family. I have it in my notes is Sammy was 28 in the world. Tony was 70. I remember seeing them play when they were 13, 14 years old for the first time. The father, he was part of a winning Davis Cup team, maybe more than one. He was a longtime coach at Rice. Tell us a little bit about spending time with that family.
Sammy, amazing guy. Um, I actually play him in a one set friendly, and I couldn't believe how well Sammy strike the ball. I was like, man, I'm hitting heavy topspin, but that doesn't work. It's just hitting the ball through the court like it's nothing. And I don't know how old was Sammy then, but yeah, amazing, very humble. Share a lot of experience and knowledge with me. Helped me a little bit on my game. I was trying to play tournaments at the time, and he will watch me, and he will definitely tell me I need to get better at the net, but never really explained to me how. But he knew my forward game had to be sharper. But very very humble. I think he beat Sampras, and I asked him one day, so Sammy, did you beat Sampras in Philadelphia? And he's like, did I? I was like, man, you don't remember if you beat Sampras? He's like, man, I don't remember. You have to go back and see. So I went and checked online, and I was like, yeah, you beat him. He's like, oh yeah, I think I beat him. Like, yeah, but I don't think he played that well. He's that kind of guy, he always humble.
Well, I think that's where, for our listeners, first generation, second generation, third generation. I mean, I tell people I was born into jockocracy, but I wasn't born into tennis. There's a lot to be said just being around it, that sense of belonging, and knowing that junior tennis is junior tennis. I could just draw from memories. A South African, Pat Kramer, this English guy and I were seated first in a men's open in Florida. We played Pat Kramer in doubles, and it was like, for him it was like taking candy from a baby. And then shortly after that he lost to Noah in 5 sets at the U.S. Open. But just there's just so many different levels of the game, and that's where the juniors, it's just not in perspective. And tournaments are a business. ITFs, idiots traveling foolishly, ITFs, and and there's 5 different categories of ITFs. And granted, if your federation's paying it or your parents have a money tree, it is great to play the junior Grand Slams. I have a funny story about the junior Grand Slam with my son Connor. He was my first son. Was a C-section. The second son was a scheduled C-section, and great mom, but just didn't know, and so he had a choice for Connor. He could be born between December 19th and January 7th, and I was just begging to have him be born in January, but he was born. He was born on December 19th. And,
oh no!
That's where life's not fair. I mean, the man does not have any idea of pregnancy. I don't usually too many Bill Cosby jokes anymore, but Bill Cosby said about pregnancy, the man can experience that by taking your top lip and pulling it over your head. So long story short, my son was born on December 19th. And as he ended up being ranked 2 in the 18s. And remember my former wife saying, this is not fair. Can I write a letter to someone? But to be born in January. So again, playing the junior Grand Slams, it's like, but when the Fed won Junior Wimbledon and he was rushed off, one of our guests, someone who Dave Anderson was a classmate with, Carla Navarro, her brother, 10 years older, but he beat Federer. But when Federer left Wimbledon, he really wanted to stay for the party, the Wimbledon ball. And he said, I don't know if I'll ever be back. He knew that just because you play junior Wimbledon doesn't mean you get to play Wimbledon. But I do think there's a lot to be said that, if you get that sense of belonging, you're around that and you have no awe factor. And you get the sense what it's like to be a professional. But yeah, if your federation doesn't have money and your parents can't afford it, I would work on skills, and fitness. And if you want to be a pro player, most people are late bloomers. They're not teenage sensations. There's not too many. Now we have Alcaraz. You could see, Nadal was a teenage sensation, but Federer wasn't. They're 5 years apart. I mean, to me, a teenage sensation, you're a teenager, you're on TV, and you're playing the slams. You're playing, which I really have to train myself to say the majors. The slam is when you win all 4. But did you meet the father?
I didn't meet him. No,
Yeah.
but apparently he was better than Sammy, right?
Well, just in his bio, he's in the NCAA finals in '57. He lost to Barry McKay, the late Barry McKay. Yeah, I'm certainly an amateur historian with tennis. Yeah, who's to say? But I certainly wouldn't know. But your kids are 28 and 70 in the world. They're obviously very good players, and every player has their day. every player has their day. But their dad definitely, was a very, very good tennis player, but also too tennis history. Davis Cup. At the time, they say 57 when he was in NCAA finals, and shortly after that, 60s to 62. It was still amateurs. The best players in the world didn't play Davis Cup because they had signed pro contracts. So tennis history is very complex, and that really, I just am not into the GOAT, who's the greatest of all time.
Right.
It is just, years ago there wasn't such an emphasis on, the best players in the world. For example, they didn't go to Australia. Borg played it one time. It's just really interesting on how many times people played it. With another thing too is tell us about UT Rio Grande Valley. I mean, where is that? I mean, what type of program do they have? I know Wes Knott is there now, and I know that he's contacted me several times in years gone by to just talk to me about how he appreciates what we put out there with free education. But where was that? As far south as you can go in Texas, where is it? I mean, obviously the Rio Grande, is it right there? Is it by El Paso?
Yeah, Rio Grande Valley is if you're going from Dallas to San Antonio, it's South San Antonio, so you have to go further down. Like if you're going to South Padre Island, all the way down, and the city that is on the border with Mexico is Reynosa. So UTRGV is located in Edinburgh, Texas.
Okay.
And I think the biggest city is the one with the airport is McAllen, Texas. That's where we had our apartment, and I mean everything is connected there. McAllen, Texas, Mission, Texas. They call it the valley. They call it the valley.
No, I spent some time training, going to tournaments and training coaches and players in Corpus Christi. A fun story Wes
Mm-hmm.
Knott told me at one time. He was with USC, and one of the USC players, who I later met through Austin Krajicek, she was considering to have Andy Fitzell work for her, and Wes said,
Mm-hmm.
no, 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 you don't want to do that. And then, later on, he was very open, which we think should happen more and more, that if people really were to study and have a handle, most people that criticize the great base, solid fundamentals, strong character, that they just don't know. But he he got connected, and he spent more and more time with the content. And then and I remember him, reaching out and telling me that story, and said, I owe you guys and owe Andy Fitzell an apology. But I just didn't know anything about the school. Tell us about your thoughts on foreign players versus American players. You're a foreign player. University of New Mexico, for the most part, foreign players. And then your wife's experience when she was at Purdue, was it mostly American, foreign? I mean, what would obviously, we could talk to your wife. I mean, what would she say? More importantly, we just go, what do you think about, that situation? Foreign players versus American players.
I think the narrative and among coaches now, head coaches, is that they have to recruit internationals because the good American players, they want to go to the big schools, and it's hard to get the number one in Texas to go to New Mexico, right? The number one in Texas doesn't want to go to New Mexico. They want to go to big schools like Texas, TCU. So the reason why big schools like New Mexico don't consider having that many Americans in the team is because in their eyes the best players in America don't want to go there, right? So they have to reach out to the foreign players. We had players visiting from Europe, from England, Albuquerque, and they don't really understand all the schools that they could go. So they try to sell them like, hey, listen, like New Mexico is a great place, and we have all this, we have a great culture, and we're trying to get them to understand that, hey, listen, you don't have to go to UT to have a great experience. You can come here and you're gonna have, maybe you don't have the same resources based on like how many rackets we can give you, but hey, the amount of practice that you're gonna get is gonna be the same. You're gonna be able to have a fitness program. You're gonna be able to have a good college degree. Because nowadays, Steve, you don't need to. People used to tell me, "Oh, there's no way you could go work at Goldman Sachs if you graduate from University of New Mexico." Well, that's not true. One of my best friends, he's in Harvard Law, and he played tennis at UTA. So that has changed a lot. So the idea of bringing foreigners is it's about that, right? The opportunity to bring good players that want to play for you.
Yeah, I think here in the States, brand society, want to go to, actually when the kids at, say, Kalamazoo or San Diego, they'll fill out a form. A lot of times they don't know that many schools, but they're going to put down Stanford, they're going to put down Duke.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to have the brand names, the UCLA, the power conferences. But also, too, I think people need to do their homework. I love what Vic Braden used to say, go where you're wanted. And then, really in the end, how many colleges have a great track record producing pros? Simon Urjaw with NC State, Dave Seckers talked about that, where he's done the research, and he, I guess he can just tell you, okay, these are the people from this school who've made top 200 in the world or whatever. But I love what you said about the practice. Blossom where you're planted, and if you want to play pro tennis, I really think when you play college tennis, you should play college tennis. I think it's a pretty strong word, disgusting. The recruiting. Well, you can come in January. You can play another season of futures or another the fall semester. Play another 16 weeks, and you're really not going to build your ranking that high if you're in college. And you're in college, and I think that if people went back to the old days where you couldn't even play as a freshman, we talk about it
Right.
all the time, the Stan Smiths and the Arthur Ashes, U.S. Open, Wimbledon champions, they go to college. Ash at UCLA and Smith at USC, their freshman year, they have to work on their game. They're in the developmental program. And it's really long term. If someone wants to be a pro, and it's tough. I mean, my son Connor, who, at Brookhaven, you helped him so much, and he played college tennis for 4 years. He played for 3. It's not that glorified, but to hang in there and say, okay, I really want to be a pro. We use the term lifer. And the people that are really successful, they're not going away. They want to be a pro player. They're going to be in their 30s. But also, too, it's a war of financial attrition. There's some people who would have loved to have found a way, but financially they just couldn't swing it, to hang in there and continue to play.
Yeah. The one thing I tell my players is it's all about risk management. No different than investing, right? If you only put your eggs in one basket, you're not managing your risk. And if you put all your eggs in pro tennis, what happens if something goes south, right? So the person really needs to understand, reality. They got to understand reality, and they got to understand that there's one purpose in the working in the labor market. And that purpose is you got to be able to make money. And if you don't make money, you can't pay the bills. If you can't pay the bills, you can't live in a society. So I always tell them this: you have to make sure that you have a backup plan. That if Plan A doesn't work, you have Plan B. And within Plan A and Plan B, you have different branches that you can go to. With tennis, if you could always go and teach tennis. With school, you can always go to the private sector, the professional work, and do that. The beautiful thing about coaching tennis, having the dream of becoming a professional tennis player, is that you can actually do both. You can, and we have a bunch of guys now, Brookhaven, that they're coaches and they're training at the same time. You finish school at 23, and you want to become a tennis coach, and you work. First of all, you got to acquire the right information. You acquire the right information, and you work. You work for a good 6-7 years, and during that time, you build your bank account, teaching lessons and practicing that knowledge by working on your own game and by teaching. And by teaching other people, you're going to be able to make sure that everything that you learn, you put it in play in your own game. And once that happens, now your level is different. By the time you're 28, your body's more mature. You spend all this time training. If you're lucky enough to stay on that path, then you try play some tournaments. And now you don't have you don't have that pressure of, hey, I go to this tournament, I have to win because I gotta make sure I pay my coach, or I pay whatever I have to pay. You already have your clientele, you already have your job, you make X amount of money, and you can forecast more what it's gonna be like to be in the tour. That's the best way I think that people can do it after they graduate from college. And if it doesn't work out, hey, you always have your job. But at the end of the day, people have to work. They have to work, and there's no escape. Unless your parents have a lot of money and they can pay your career, then yeah, that's different. But how many people are in that situation, right? So yeah, that's my opinion on that.
No, it's well stated. What about as a couple? I am asked that many times, and having trained tennis coaches, a club owner, an operator, the GM, should they hire was husband wife combo? What's it like for both of you to be in tennis? I mean, it's not 9 to 5, it's not weekends off. What advice do you have for couples that are in the tennis industry?
Well, the thing about being a tennis pro is that you have flexibility with your schedule. You can always try to manage your schedule around with the duties that you have within your own family. Um, I get flexibility with my schedule. Stephanie has flexibility with her schedule to where we can, be successful with our duties. Um, then having a, 9 to 5 job, if I need to, pick up Charlie at school, it's a little bit more difficult when you know you have to be at the office, from 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning to sometimes 8 p.m. because that's not true. When you work for like these big banks, they're not gonna when you begin your first 10 years, it's not gonna be 8 to 5. That's a lie.
Okay.
You're gonna overwork, and it looks bad to have that kind of flexibility from the get go. I mean, I don't think I have vacation. I never requested vacation when I was at Goldman Sachs, because the environment didn't. But tennis is different. Tennis allows you to, hey, listen, like if you want to book 4 lessons in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, and then you have a gap to to do the duties that you need to do with your family, you can do that, and we both do it.
No, that's well point. Good, very good point. I know I've spent a lot of time at Brookhaven, and I've had a lot of young coaches go, "Well, no one can work like Dave," and I go, "Yeah, sure you can. You get there, you get there before the cows get up, and I mean, you just you own the city when you get up really early in the morning, and but yeah, you do have the flexibility to pick your spots with.
Yeah, no, it's amazing what Dave's been able to do in 30 years. I was I was telling him today, Dave. A lot of people, a lot of coaches now. You see a lot of people having Instagram accounts. They're doing Instagram videos and they want to be the tennis gurus of the world. And they're just trying to build their business. And I understand that they're trying to survive. But to going back to player development, which I think this is why we do our jobs at Brookhaven and you, Steve, with the GreatBase player development. The way to do it is very simple. You have to make sure you stay. You got to stay a long time, and you got to be there for the people, for the family, and the family's got to stay with you. But when you don't stay, when you're not there for the 30 years and you're bouncing around, kind of like how I have done it, it's hard. It's hard to change people's lives. It's hard to see players, develop in the long term because you always switch into different jobs. And what Dave Anderson has been able to do for 30 years, it's amazing. Whether it's right or wrong, whether it's sexy, the information or it's not, or whatever they want to say, the man has been there for 30 years from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And in 30 years, a lot of families have come to Dallas. So you need that. You need both. You need both sides to stay in one place to develop. A lot of families now, they jump around too much and coaches. So it's hard. It's hard to stay, with one formula. And as you always say, tennis is a unregulated profession. And the training is not going to be the same if they go country to country, state to state, county to county.
Yeah, with start the course, stay the course. On our website, we have a lengthy article. It's all the articles I've written. This one has been published in the most magazines and in the most languages. And it's why do people switch coaches so much? And the first answer is they copy the pros. That's what the pros do. But it's a long article, and that's where parents have to understand. Most of the time, they're going down the road for the first time. It's the first time they're raising a tennis player, and it's all new. And sure enough, they can be a quick study. 10 years to become a player. Arthur Ashe used to say 3 years to be a fair player, 5 years to be a good player, 10 years to be a great player. It takes 10 years to, people need to put 10 years in before they have an opinion, before, it's not like, we say, okay, you need to have lesson plans. You need to, be a copycat, or you need to,
Right.
you need to imitate before you innovate. We don't need your 2 cents until you put 10 years in. And that's really not that long of an internship if someone starts when they're, say, their early 20s by the time they're 32. But, people, I know over the years, so many people have worked with Anderson for too short a time, where they branch off and they're doing their own thing, and they maybe they're making a little more money, but you just have to be around it. That stick-to-itiveness. Then the people come off the tour, say someone who's played college tennis, and they get a very credible or powerful, prestigious position right away, and they haven't paid their dues. Tell us about your game, the GreatBase, tennis teaching. Obviously, your wife was at a very young age. You could tell us when she started at Brookhaven, how old she was. But for yourself, when did you first spend time around the GreatBase? And we tell people that, they come in and they spend a couple weeks. It's just a blink of an eye. And then also, too, the coaches that we've trained that have had success, like a Dave Anderson, I'm going to guess, probably close to 600, definitely 500 plus people that he's trained that have gone on and played D1 tennis. I think so many people in our industry, they really haven't taken beginners and made them, college players or beyond. But tell us about, so your wife was really at a young age introduced to the GreatBase. How about yourself?
Yeah. So in Lofkin, I will train night times, and Stephanie come and watch me hit balls. And, she'll give me a couple of tips. She always try to make me hit the ball early, like driving the ball, bringing my ball line down. But I never really understood how to do that. I knew how to do it, but I didn't know how. I always hit the ball heavy, a lot of spin, and my ball line was too high, so I had trouble returning a serve. So she could tell me, you just gotta catch the ball early. It became a joke, after a few months. She would tell me, I just catch the ball early. But she told me, I went to play a match, and the match didn't go well. And she said, your forehand is a mess. Your back is a mess. You just got to make sure you hit the ball better. You got to go see Anderson at Brookhaven. So Stephanie called Anderson, and I went to see him. And the first day I arrived, it was early morning in February, cold. And also going back, I went back to two-handed the backhand, Steve. I made a switch at TJC. I injured my shoulder, and I couldn't hit one-handed anymore. So I had to switch to two-handed. So I had to teach myself how to, hit two-handed again. So I started with my racket low, because I tried to copy Jill Simon, because I thought it was the easiest way to hit a backhand. You start from that low. But anyway, going back to Anderson, I'm on court 13, and he films my backhand. I'm with two girls, 12 and 14 maybe, and this girl's backhand were incredible. And I was like, man, what a deceiving place. My first day, I'm with a 12-year-old that hits the ball better than me, and I had ATP points. And I mean, I didn't think I was an unbelievable player, but I thought I was good at tennis. I mean, I played my whole life, and I go to play at a good level. So that was very humbling to me, being at Brookhaven and seeing how it wasn't really about, win and losses. It was about quality of hitting. And I spent every morning I think Dave will get there at 6. So I was there at 6 a.m. until he left. And I was on his score. We didn't even eat lunch. He'll be like, hey, Papa, you want a break?
And I was like, man, if you're not taking a break, I'm not taking one. And I didn't know that he never takes a break, so I was in trouble. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm hitting all the time. So my first 3 months, I don't even know what I was doing, Steve. I was just, learning and hitting balls and teaching class whenever I had to teach class. I don't even think I had private lessons. I was just all in, learning from him. And one day I'm in the stringing room. I think it was like after 3 months. And, Dave always, talk about you, but never really mentioned anything about the GreatBase to me. He told me the stories about you and how he, became a better coach, because of everything that he learned from you, but never really mentioned the GreatBase to me. One day I'm in the stringing room, and a coach from Brookhaven, Paul Dutois, he started asking me questions about the GreatBase. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, do you know the grips? Do you know the size of the core? Do you know how the swing should be? Blah, 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 the shape of the swing. And I was like, I'm lost. I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, you need to go and watch, the videos. And I think back then you could go onto the GreatBase Tennis website and have access to the videos. I think now you have to go to Facebook page to get a tennis intelligence apply. But I did that. I got so obsessed during a travel team that I did that after the travel team, I went back to the hotel and watched the videos. Whenever I had a time, where I was in the parking lot waiting for somebody to get in a match, I would watch the videos. And I spent 2 weeks watching every single video. I even took the test to get my certification, and I passed my certification. And then everything I learned, I started applying it when I was teaching. Then I was like, man, the only way I'm going to get good at this is teaching. So I'll, teach every lesson, anything that I could teach, I'll teach, and I apply what I learned, and I'll go back to Dave Core and do the drills with the adults, with the kids, hit balls. I mean, I did it all. And Dave said something to me. He said, if you really wanna understand this at a different level, you gotta make sure you understand how to do it with your non-dominant hand. And I said, okay, I can do that. And until today, I mean, I can hit every shot with my left hand, but to some degree, just as clean as my dominant hand. So that was my first taste of the GreatBase. And I think I mastered my teaching when I left, because I didn't have anybody with me. Brookhaven is a huge place. Right now we have 28 coaches, and they're all involved with the GreatBase. But when you're teaching alone, then you don't have anybody. You're the only person in the city that speaks that language. It's hard, and it's easy to deviate at times. And me going to all these places in McAllen and Albuquerque, it made me stronger, because I was like, man, one of the best coaches at Brookhaven is Tim Adams. He's able to grab a 4 or 5 year old and hit the ball just as clean as I can do it. So I have to make sure I stick to my basics and just do the work, understand the work, not only with my own game, but teaching, and being alone, helped me. So that's the story.
Oh, that's great. Tim Adams. I always think of Tim when I think of University of North Carolina. He was the alma mater, God's team. I go, why do you call it God's team? He goes, look at the sky. The sky's light. The sky's light blue. And no, so many things. Playing with the opposite hand. We tell kids that all the time. We love backboards, and that's a great way to do it. Go out, play some mini tennis, but you should be able to play. Playing with your opposite hand, humility, perspective, coordination. You just make a list of 50 words. And, from Jim Lair, when we have people play, say tiebreakers, go play a set, with your opposite hand. It's not don't giggle. This is the real deal. You know, Ryan Fleming is somebody we trained who played high level college tennis, and he played some in the pros. And he came to us like he was 28 years old. He had bad tennis elbow, and we helped him with his tennis game. But he took it upon himself to really play really well, high level with his left hand. And he's played so many teenage boys. I'm talking about guys that are like a 10-5, 11-0. And, you play him right-handed or left-handed. And, obviously he's better with his dominant hand, but he's the same athlete. And he's got the same mindset. And, I think of my son Connor, he spent quite a bit of time, not that he ever really conquered the strokes, but he said, you play better tactically with your left hand. You're just trying to keep the ball play centered. You're not making unforced errors, banging the ball wide. And you're looking for that first opportunity to go forward. And you really, when you're playing with your opposite hand, you got to really close into the net. You just got to get your nose right on top of the net. But it's interesting that you've mentioned a couple of players, the Frenchman, Gilles Simon. I think back of my oldest son who, he won a bunch when he was 10 and 12 years old, Mikhail. And, I think you have to be your own best critic. Go, well, if things could have been done differently, one thing I would have done differently is, okay, just come to the net when you want to. We've taught you how to volley. You volley really well. Just come when you want to. And a lot of times, forget the green light point. When you're ahead by 2 or 3 points, forget 130 degrees, forget aggressive air margin sometimes you'd be better off to let people come in on their own terms. But at the same time, to create practice where, you're going to play a set, go play 3 sets. The first set, this is just the theme for the day. You can hit 3 ground strokes. The second set, you can hit 2 ground strokes. The third set, you can hit 1 ground stroke. Even if you have to make it, a short version of scoring with, the senior moment, I've gone. I think we just had the one senior moment, but the memory. Let's come back to Dave Anderson's memory. He does have a mind like a steel trap, though. Why do you elaborate upon that? So now you're working with him, and you have some management duties for the program, correct?
Yeah. So 2 years ago, I was offered to be the high performance director at Brookhaven, and I accepted the job. So it's been now I think it was 2 years on Monday, working with Dave. And I think because of COVID, now a lot of the players have moved to online schooling, and our online program has grown a lot. We have a lot of kids in the mornings. We have 2 sessions, 8 to 10 and 12:30 to 2:30. And because of the COVID issue, a lot of these kids, they discover online schooling, and they realize that it's efficient, and if they want to play college tennis, then they need more hours. And we grew it in the past 2 years. We've done a phenomenal job together. It's been kind of nice being able to, have the new guys coming in and humble them. And it's very hard these days to get, coaches that played at a Power 5 school to tell them, hey, listen, like, you gotta learn. You still got a lot to learn. It doesn't matter if you play at Texas, you're still gonna learn. And George is an amazing example of that. Playing at Texas, and during COVID, I think he was working with you and changed game. And now he's with us, and he's the same. He comes in the mornings and he trains with all the kids. He does all the drills, just like if he's part of the program, and it's not excuse of any drills that we call. He does everything we ask. So it's fun for us to be able to do that and grow again, build a new wave of coaches, of staff. It's fun to see everybody grow from the players and the coaching staff.
For our listeners, you mentioned George Goldoff. We interviewed George, and yeah, he ended up, 7 years in Tibet. I mean, 7 months with us during the pandemic. And, obviously he did well in juniors, did well in college, but it's like, no, this is a different level of education. We're going to, you really have to, and we'd like to consider ourselves lifelong learners, but to really go into the depth of tennis instruction. With George Goldoff, I think of this story, Marcos Baghdadis. He did break all those rackets. I think he broke every racket in his bag one time.
In Australia.
It's on YouTube. But that guy played with a big time smile on his face, Cyprus. But, by the time he was 14 or 15, he was playing Davis Cup matches against countries like Ireland and Norway. And so my son Connor and I, we went over to Patrick's place. This was when he was in Paris, outside of Paris. And it was amazing. Baghdadis came right up to us, shook our hands, and we were there not very long, a couple weeks, but anyway, Baghdadis is running with these kids. There's these it was out in the country, farm country, and there's these hills, and he was, it wasn't a high level of junior players that were there at that time. There was certainly some pros, but the juniors, he's out there running, and I remember that they were going camping, and he leaves his girlfriend behind. He goes, no, I'm going on this trip. It was a character building trip, and they're climbing a mountain and sleeping in tents, and I do think that's a major problem with tennis in the U.S. My son Connor, more so than Mikhail, but Connor spent quite a bit of time in Vecchio, and I mean, you go to practice, and Edberg's at practice hitting with the kids. It's just not big business. It's just different, that sense of belonging. For times in the U.S., you could see it with our Davis Cup team, where when the Swedes would go to play Davis Cup, they would all go. All these great players show up, and they don't even know if they're going to play. The American Davis Cup team, for years and years, you only make the trip if you're going to play, and that didn't really matter for the longest time. When the Swedes were so good, it didn't matter where they were playing. It was like 8 or 9 players are there. Just so many things. It's fun to talk about tennis. But coming back to senior moment, our fact checker, Andres Barbosa, he told me on one of the podcasts, I was talking about the big three, and I think it was with how fun it was to watch Andy Murray play in Australia and what character. But I said Andy Roddick in the big, the fourth musketeer. But Todd Whittam is somebody I met. I struggle with that name. It was Todd Witzkin. Todd Witzkin is the late Todd Witzkin. That's the brother-in-law of Ben Shelton. So that young man was born into tennis families that are connected with understanding the lifestyle, the attitude of the household, and how to compete. Let's talk a little bit about character. I'm going to tell you a story. Casey Curtis, I've got to spend a lot of time with here the last year, Battle of Boca, and he's worked with a lot of top players, and a mom calls him up and says, hey, I'd like to have you work with my son. And he says to the mom, well, who's he working with right now? Use my name in third person. The mom says, Steve Smith. And he just says, I'm not working with your son. There's no reason for you not to continue working with him. Thank you very much. And then, he told me the story. He said, hey, this mom called me up, and, I think that doesn't happen enough where you say, hey, why would you not want to stay with that coach? Look at his track record. And you could talk to us a little bit about Brookhaven, the bopping and shopping, and, the players go from one place to the next. And, if someone did have to leave Brookhaven for, international travel or, better sparring partners, but they never should leave Brookhaven as far as not circling back if it's, twice a month. I mean, to just get filmed. Say, okay, let's just go through some film. I'm training elsewhere, but But why don't you comment a little bit on character with, I mean, you're around parents all the time. I mean, I've met so many great parents. The parents need more training than the players. I mean, the kid is a kid, you know, they're a teenager, they're younger. But it's really the parents. And, you know, many times, parents are just talking to parents. You know, life's on the go and we're all really busy and, you know, they're going
Yeah.
down the road for the first time and they really don't know what they don't know. But we want to make a few comments on character, whether it's applied to, I guess, all three, the triangle: kids, parents, and coaches.
Yeah. Today we have mental training day, and Coach Anderson, he set up the whole mental talk class, and after he finished, I said, the parents are the ones that have to be here listening to this, because the kids listen to us say those things every day, every single day. But when you have a kid that you tell him A at tennis, and the parents are trying to say A, but they're acting B, it's hard to get an A response when the kid is playing tennis. So, the attitude of the household is going to have a huge impact in the character of the player. Whether it's, if Uncle Tony and Rafa are Brookhaven, it's not going to change as much as people think if the household is not organized in the same book as what the coaches are trying to tell them. I had when my brother moved to Dallas, my two nephews, they spend a lot of time training in Caracas. They train at an academy. I don't know if you know the name, Harold Castillo.
Yeah, just the name, yeah.
Name. So they train with him. Harold has produced many good players, throughout 20 years in Caracas. When I was growing up, he produced one of the best players in the nation. One of the kids that came out of that academy, a good friend of mine, David Soto, he and Jesus Andres, they came out of that academy. So I told my brother, listen, like, the only really system that Caracas has is going with Harold. So Harold teaches, elbows up and keeping the racket, high with the elbow, kind of like a Leighton Hewitt look, kind of like a curious forehand, and the same with the backhand, high elbow. So when my nephews came, they came with huge backswings, that's what they've been taught there. And they have these pulses when they turn, when they do the unit turn, they kind of bounce the racket up and down to load. And pretty much everything is open stance, and their serve were palm up. They had choppy volleys. But they could play. I mean, they were ranked in the top 10 in the nation and in their age group. And, they go home and I film them first day, every shot. I wish I would have saved those videos. And I told my brother, here's how we're going to do this. These kids are going to spend time in academy prep. They're not going to high performance until they learn how to hit the ball. They got to learn what we do here at Brookhaven, how we do it. If they don't understand that, they will never go to high performance. And they're not allowed to have a private lesson. And I told them, every content that you see on the GreatBase Tennis, you got to see it. You got to watch every single video, and you got to be able to teach each other everything that's there. And, a year later, I think Dion comes to me and he said, "Hey, Papi," they call me Papi at Brookhaven, by the way. That's my nickname. Dion said, "Hey, Papi, we have to move the boys, man. They're too good now." And I said, "Just keep them there a little longer." So Dion finally, kept them there a little longer, and And then he comes back and says, "Hey, no, we have to move them." So it took about a year and 2 months for my nephews to move to high performance, and we were able to do this because they're my nephews. My brother never called me to ask me, why is my kid not hitting with this person? Why is my kid not playing matches? The attitude of our household was, listen, like, I've been through a lot in my tennis career. My brother has been through a lot to come here to the United States, sacrifice a lot. This is one-time opportunity, and you guys have to get it right. And they did it. And if parents will learn from that story and just commit to a program. It's already difficult to commit to a diet for a week. Commit to a program and do it. You will see results. Even Steve, if the information wasn't there, because every place have their system, they just don't know they have a system. They'll get better, because following a program is better than not following one. This is just very difficult for parents to digest, because they feel like they're their kid's manager, and they always want to have a saying, and everybody in this world, they want to be right. And to be honest, I don't really care if I'm right or not. I teach based on facts. If I teach tennis and technique and tactics, I'm going to teach it based on physics. If I'm going to tell you about life, I'm going to tell you about perspective and reality. I'm not going to tell you things based on like, oh, I think I'm good. I think I was top 200 in the world. I play at UT or Baylor, and I think I have the title. I don't care about that. I tell them the facts, the truth, and the physics behind it, the easiest way, the most efficient way to do it. If they want to do it, all in. If they don't want to do it, they know me. They already know who I am. They're not even gonna come back to me, because they know what I'm gonna tell them. So that's
a great story. You use the word truth on our website. Barry Hint came to visit. It's a narrative. It's 80 pages maybe. It's the story on our program is called Journey to the Truth. We have mentioned Dion's name, Dion Krupe, again, a veteran coach. I've been at it for so long. I have to get him on as a guest. Mike Cussard is someone who, even before Anderson and Krupe, he went through tennis tech. And I remember, you learn from your students. I've mentioned this before, that he ran a program for adults where he said, okay, the first year, don't plan on playing. Don't plan on playing. Just some thoughts from your thoughts on pickleball. We as tennis coaches in the industry, what we need to do is say, learn tennis skills to play pickleball. And then you'll be able to play tennis. What's going on right now with pickleball, let me just say it, and Jim Klein said it on our podcast, is tennis skills will help you with pickleball, but pickleball will not help you with tennis skills. So it really should just be a one-way street. Tell us a little about mental training. You're doing that every week. How long is that? Is it mandatory? And how many parents do come?
Well, we do mental training on Wednesdays for 30 minutes, and parents don't come to the mental training. The kids do. But after this podcast, I'm definitely speaking to Dave about allowing the parents to be there, because it's information that they need. It's more valuable than coming to a lesson to learn how we teach the forehand, or how we teach tactics. I have a joke that in practice I always talk about how simple it is to learn, how to hit a forehand volley, how to hit a backhand volley. Yeah. And I always say it's so simple that a squirrel can do it. And I make them shadow swing, right? Forehand volley. Explain the grip like I'm explaining a primary class. And I try to make it so simple that they don't think there's magic behind it, because there's not. it can be. I don't believe it takes private of lessons to learn how to hit a foreign volley.
No.
I don't think it does. I think it's a monetary way for the tennis industry, to allow us to have a job and to make money. But talking about developing a tennis player, you don't need 3 lessons a day to learn how to volley. You need practice, but you don't need a specific private lesson to learn, the grip and the turn and stepping and the whole concept of volley. But for some reason, parents, they think they can, they can invest their money into strokes. They think like the more they invest their money in technical lessons, the kid's gonna get better, and it doesn't really work like that.
No, with my oldest son went to a Jesuit high school in Tampa, and I remember the first time the parents were on campus, and we're in the chapel, and Father Doyle, he says, a few of you are chewing gum, so everyone leave, exit the church, exit the chapel, and come back in. I'm going, I love this place. I love this place. The statement was, your son will, it was all boys school, your son will come in a boy and leave a man. When you get off on a tangent, I don't think they've really delivered that. But mental training, I mean, it's great you're doing that. It's really every day. I think with the parents, coming back to Father Doyle in the Jesuit school, parents, you can come, cell phones off, put your wristwatch in your pocket because you can look at messages on your phone. And, parents could sit in the back, kids can sit on the floor. But obviously that's difficult for them to do, perhaps because of work schedules and that. It's just not the same to say, well, we'll send you a video.
Yeah.
But, you also have, at your place, you have members. It is a country club. Kids can charge French fries. And to a certain extent, you have to be politically correct. I mean, I could seeing it, filling out a form, a little profanity. Granted, parents could say no profanity. I don't want my kid to be exposed to any profanity. Parents should know, because they certainly will swear once in a while, is that your heart rate goes down when you swear. It's relaxing. just let that out. But I one time did this. I did it more than once. I didn't do it 4 times. I mean, I think I did it 3 times, but I could just remember one time in particular. Is we get 2 cameras and we're running a workshop with players, parents, and coaches, and we send the players outside, and we leave the coaches and the parents. And I take my car keys and I slam them down on the table, and I yell the SHIT word 3 times as loud as I can. But the people are being filmed. The parents and the coaches are being filmed. And for the most part, it was, pick on the moms. And, I mean, I will use nicknames just for one day, don't make them stick. But some of the moms had this scary, it was like they were in a scary movie. And then so later we said, no, we were just filming you. We want to now see your reaction to myself, screaming and just swearing. And I go, you're not going to go to a tournament and not hear that S word. So,
right.
Of course, I grew up in ice hockey, and profanity is it's like my son Connor came out of a locker room one time. He's like 5, 6 years old, and he said, what does a coach mean when he says we're effing pathetic? So, yeah, killing the kids with kindness. But with just here the last 48 hours, I've been doing some mental training. And, one thing about, if you're from a big family, and right now families are small. We had a player with us today who was from a family of 4. And no one else, family of 3, families of 2, just 1 child. Times are different. And I know I have 3 older brothers. When one of them was in trouble, we were all in trouble. And that's what happens with a squad. That's what happens with a really successful tennis program. Even into pro sports, one player's in maybe not say the NBA or the marquee players and such, but one player's in trouble, everybody's in trouble. One player's in the doghouse, everybody's in the doghouse. The really top coaches, some kid messes up, and everybody's got to leave, and okay, we'll see you. It's not 5 a.m. We'll see you at 4:30 tomorrow morning. And the kid who messes up just sits there and watches while their teammates, will run sprints and they're not going to stop until someone vomits, or if the really top programs, if you vomit, you don't stop. But I was telling some kids today, like your mile time defines you, your 400 defines you, the number of push-ups you can do in a minute, that defines you, how long you can keep your legs up 6 inches off the ground, that defines you. And you really have to do more physical training to be mentally tough. That's one negative about Brookhaven, such a beautiful place, but there's no track, there's no other athletes walking around, there's no athletic fields. Obviously it's a country club, there's swim. You think of Jordan Spieth, there's world-class athletes that have hung out at Brookhaven. But Jordan Spieth, you read about him is that, I think his younger sister who has special needs, and playing football and playing other sports, is like, where does the character come from? And that's really where we're bleeding in America. The tail's wagging the dog, and the parents, they don't realize it, but for the most part, my parents used to say this, those parents are making a fool of their kid. We just see it all the time. Now, we had a visiting coach today from Colombia, and he did so much for his nephew. His nephew came to us, and he was number 3 in Colombia. This is many years ago. And he was, a couple townhouses where the players are staying. He's number 3 in Colombia and number 4 in the townhouse, but he's still cocky. He's still cocky. Like, how can that be? But that inner voice, how you talk to a kid, it's really interesting with what defines you as a tennis player. And I don't want parents sending me a text message where, and I don't really, I know that it is nice with the self-esteem and such. I don't like to have a website where you're putting up the trophies and who won this and who won that. And, I don't think...
I hate that. I told my nephew, you don't ever put another picture on Instagram again that you won. That's nothing. That's a piece of plastic. You're not allowed to. I basically had enough and I had to tell him.
No, and I do think the parents, it can be like a scrapbook now. They can just do it much better. They just innocently naive. They start a scrapbook and they send it to the aunts and uncles, and then other people see it. And it's social media. I've met many people over the years where they're trying to document the story of success their child's having before they've had it. I can see keeping a photo album and keep some newspaper clips, but come on.
You said it all right there.
Yeah, but like say Uncle Tony, Rafa Nadal does not come from tennis information. It's like Wozniacki. There's many people. No, they were not. They just hit on the backboard, but they were totally immersed in it. And I have nothing but respect for players at that level. But you just think of Rafa Nadal, one of his uncles was, when Spain won the World Cup, he's on the team. And you think, oh my word.
Mm-hmm.
What was he exposed to? So then when kids realize they have no connections like that, they shouldn't get the chip on their shoulder. I told this one boy today that I said, you are going to go home in a couple weeks. You never have to see me again. I said, and that's fine. I'm not against you. I'm for you. It's like Maria Sharapova. Her father's screaming at her, Yuri. It's just louder than loud. And she said, I figured out a long time ago that he's for me, not against me. And that's where kids, they grow myelin at a slower rate because they create so much interference. But I told this kid, I said, and this is really unfortunate that it happens, that people will see someone that I've trained to hit a tennis ball and people know it. They can walk in and people are warming up for a tournament, and seriously, there could be like 200 kids and they're walking around and they go, oh, that kid's from either our program or they work with someone because they have these short compact swings and they don't have extreme grips. And it's really unfortunate. I don't take that as a compliment for how well we teach fundamentals. I think, oh my word, is our game in trouble? Where one of our students can, because they're fundamentally sound, people can just recognize them among basically a sea of tennis players. But I told this kid, Certainly I have falling out with people because for the most part, how that happens is they told me they wanted me to take them from point A to point B. And well, you're trying to push some buttons on how they can get to point B, and they can't take it anymore. They just don't understand. They're getting to a level where you can step up the coaching, and they just don't understand. But I told this young boy, I said, you don't have to listen to me ever again, but when people watch you hit a tennis ball, they're going to know. They're going to know. And, he has done a very good job. I was with him at a national tournament and told his mother, I said, I'm asking him questions and he just doesn't know. And at that level, what's your radius on a short ball range? What's 34 feet? Want to have people answer like they're an NFL quarterback, like they're a student of the game. Hey, I've known you for 5 years. And, that's where, we have a podcast with Jim Lair. I think we dedicated 2 to Jim Lair. Then we have Jim Lair on a podcast. And we figured out even if the podcast is 3 hours, it takes 1% of the week to listen to it 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. And it's not like they're listening to me. They're listening to the educational merit behind the great base. And the same thing with tennis teachers, so some people say, well, I just can't take Steve's grief anymore. I just don't want to be hassled. I just don't want to be pushed anymore. I've repeated this before on our podcast, but Doug Cash said, and use my name again in third person, you're a student of Steve Smith's the rest of your life, whether you want to be or not. Because if you're teaching tennis, I'm just going to watch your kids hit the ball. And I'm going to be the first one to go, hey, I'm coaching this kid, but keep it a secret. This kid, I've been working with them, and they just can't hit it. Go ahead.
And they need that, Steve. They need to break. When I trained with Jonathan, I never really understood how hard training was until I trained with him. And keep in mind, I was trained by Cubans, right?
Yeah.
Tough people. But Jonathan, that was another level of toughness.
And tell us again, who's Jonathan?
Jonathan Medina. He was my coach in 2007. Jonathan Medina Alvarez, he got to be number 1 in Venezuela, played Davis Cup for Venezuela, and highest rank was 320, which in Venezuela, that's a big deal. And I know that in the United States, that's another guy, but in Venezuela, if you're 320 in the world, you did well. And this guy was epic. He used to train with Mariano Puerto's dad in Argentina, and he trained down there. And then when he moved to Venezuela, he got injured. I started training with him, and practice was extremely hard. Like if I hit the ball flat, I had to do 10 push-ups. Every ball I missed in the net, I had to do 10 push-ups. If I didn't breathe out as I hit, I had to do 10 push-ups. Like I did more push-ups in 2 days than my whole life. And it got to a point that he broke me. He broke me. And because of that, because he broke me, I was able to be prepared to any circumstance because nothing was ever going to be that hard.
But at the same time, he broke you, then built you back up, correct?
Right, exactly. He broke me, and I came back stronger, right?
Yeah.
And to have that strength, you gotta make sure you're broken to be able to come back. If you've never been broken, then when you get broken at a match, then sayonara, then you will never play again.
One thing that we're having difficulty with now, it wasn't this way years ago. I think we have to say, okay, we got to do this differently. We have to have squad training. Is the fitness levels vary so much. You have some kids run a mile, and a mile takes nothing. I remember Dave Anderson was with me. We were in Boca Raton, and I was the one person hiring and got approval to hire Gavin Hopper. He's a Australian footballer, and anyway, he had a PhD in exercise technology, and he's traveling with Wally Massour and Amos Mansdorf from Israel, two coaches, the Aussie, and Massour's a player, Aussie. And it takes nothing to just go run 5 miles, go run 5 minutes, just knock off a mile. But then interval training for that and hills, and then you got to do talking to Matt Clore about a young player, and to get the Mia Hamm legs, it'd be better for a tennis player to have all the miles from soccer versus miles from just being on a track. But yet you still got to get on a track. You still got to get the stopwatch out. But yeah, soft love, tough love, crazy love. I think we're really lacking with crazy love. Doesn't have to be too crazy, but on the other hand, like, hey, this just is unacceptable. I mean, F is for unacceptable. And the standards are becoming lower. I like to tell people, hey, I don't have a crystal ball, but I have a pretty good idea where your tennis is going. Where is this headed? Just by watching you move, your legs, service motion, obviously, so many things. Now, the late ball Terry, I don't think anyone met as many families who say, hey, we want our kid to become a great player. And, I have great respect for Nick. Now, certainly Nick, I mean, he's the one who said it. Vic Braden forgot more about tennis than I know. And but at the same time, you can just tell, who's in charge. And again, the mind vitamin we use is hungry dog hunts best. And, the expression, it was great for our listeners to hear, I started working Golden Sachs, 5 a.m., I'm there to 11, is, when someone's interviewed for a job, it's the same thing. You're talking to a college coach and say, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll do windows and I'll do floors. I'll be here. I'll be the first one here, last one to leave. Just so many things. But no, it's been great to have you on as a guest. I mean, it'd be a review. You've touched upon so many points, but why don't you just give us a couple go-to things and we'll sign off. If it's like, well, if you were to just, we say tennis treasure chest, like 1, 2, 3, you find yourself like over and over again repeating to parents and players. What comes to your mind?
It's the same message as effort without having to receive a penny. You gotta work. You gotta bring the work without having to get paid. And a lot of people want to do the opposite. They want to work hard if you pay them. And like you said earlier, you gotta pay your dues. And a lot of these people are acting like they already got there because their work ethic is not there. That's the message.
Yeah, one thing with young Dave Anderson, he was a student first. One of his classmates was Craig Tiley, who obviously is very well known now for being the CEO of Tennis Australia. And there's just so many, but they were paying fees to be there. It cost them to be there, to be trained as a coach. And then they were selected to be on staff, and they were paid $600 a month to be a lab assistant. And I did not let them teach on the side. They didn't do the parking lot or the car trunk pro, because we were in Tyler, Texas. We had teachers at every park teaching for free. We had the point where we had 100+ people looking for experience, and it's okay. You got to get a night job. I mean, but money wasn't even a factor. I've met with Billy Freer many times over the years. Is that Anderson would work the same way, whether it's being paid this way or that way, and certainly I remember Dave Anderson telling Billy Freer and Dave Ware that the two of us together could run that place and be very productive. I'm sure he said more productive or as productive is with the whole staff. But, when he gets up every day, you're now part of that management team, is you got to try to make it work for 28 people to make a living from it. But also too, is that I think that the internet is partly to blame for that. That young people today get beat up, but are they looking to be mentored? I know in my time when I was hired at Tyler Junior College to go and revise that curriculum, Richard Minner said to me, "Yeah, it's been approved. You've got the job. You've got the opportunity." I'm great. And he said, "Don't you want to know what you're going to be paid?" Yeah. Tell me what I'm going to be paid. I was paid $13,000. If I had a PhD, I would have been paid $14,000. I called my mother up. I called my mother up because one of my brothers had a PhD. They both got it together. My mother helped them out so much. We used to give them the gears on that. They both got a PhD together. Because during World War II, she was pulled out of college to be a secretary for the War Department, so she could type like no tomorrow shorthand. And so I called her up and said, "Hey, that PhD is only worth $1,000." But anyway, when I worked for Braden, I was working as a volunteer, and they wanted me to work. They offered me a job. I turned it down. Second time, turned it down. And the third time, the season came. There was more students in the summer, and they said, "You have to work." But I was working nights as a bartender, and I'm hanging out with Vic. And yeah, it's I'll sign off. But my father was an engineer, but for 40 years, he was a hockey coach, a volunteer hockey coach, and he coached the little kids. For the most part, he coached the little kids, and with that, there's so many people that said, "Yeah, I worked as a volunteer coach," but you only worked as a volunteer coach when your kid was playing. Once your kid got out of youth sports, you were out. The people that just keep people that keep showing up, and that's one thing that we try to do with our free content, is we got to be givers. We got to give back to the game. We can't just take. And I think everybody should say, how can we get a big brother, big sister program? How can we get more people in the game? So to be a giver, not a taker.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I try to do with my college career. I have 4 years of volunteering, not because I wanted to put it on my resume, just because I wanted to help, because I thought I could help, and I wish I would have met someone, that like me at that age, that could help me have more clarity in my game, and that's why I do it, Steve. I mean, I'm lucky that I get paid to do it, but I just want to show, people that it can be done, and we have the roadmap. We have the map. We can show you how to do it, where a lot of us didn't have that opportunity.
No, I think one thing that's with society here in the U.S., such a big country, 3,000 miles wide, and such and such and such and such, is for young people to be around their grandparents. I think that's one amazing thing about this girl, Coco Goff. Both her grandmothers are her homeschool teachers. The stories, what was it like years and years ago? And I think that's really, with the parents of today, it's like, okay, tell us your story and your struggles and how did you get to where you are. But let's go back a generation, and then get the kids to really listen to that. And those lessons in hardship. Hardships, adversity is a blessing. Hardship's a blessing. And again, what Djokovic said, he said it during the presentation. Mm-hmm. The more disadvantages you have, the better. I mean, how I get so into tennis teaching was I was trying to learn to play myself. I was doing that. I was like, okay, this could be an occupation for me. I could have some fun, see the world. And I wasn't 9 years old when I was learning how to play. I was 19. And I just know that people were lying to me. They had no idea. Nice people, but they just didn't know. And you can't replace time. And but for me, how can a coach be making it up as they go along? I have my own ideas. This is how I see it. Ego. I mean, how can you put your head on the pillow at night when But again, I think we say, okay, 2 levels of ignorance. You don't know, but you're not helping that kid with basic fundamentals. And if they don't have basic fundamentals, there's going to be a ceiling on how good they can be. But no, it's been great to talk. This has definitely been a marathon. We have some people that they grind it out and they listen to all these podcasts. I'd like to thank them. With 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, we would, with our nonprofit, love to go get around to getting volunteers who can't necessarily donate money, but they could donate time. And, we're getting these done, but we're not doing show notes and we're not taking excerpts. And, that's what, people that are, we're pretty much at the amateur level doing what we do as far as delivery. We've had people tell us that rich in content, but poor in delivery. But no, it's been great to find out more about your background and your wife's background, and really appreciate what you've shared. And definitely the people that are into tennis and interested in going from point A to point B can definitely benefit from what you share. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. And before we leave, I would like to tell you that it doesn't go a day that Dave Anderson doesn't speak about you and show his memories to the kids and the staff. And I just wanted to tell you thank you for everything you've done for the game and for all of us. Even though I haven't directly worked with you and even meeting you in person, but thank you for everything.
No, you're more than welcome. Yeah, I need to come out to Brookhaven. Vic Brady used to say there always needs to be a master plan, and I think one thing is and Anderson would be one of the first people I were to call, was we need to be training coaches. Right now, Ferris State, and I think they've done a lot of great things over the years. I've been indirectly involved. I was there 3 times. At one time was an advisor. There's Methodist. I know, I've reached out to those directors in the past and I've shared content and such. And with the USTAU, I don't want to sound like I'm beating up the USTA, but I don't know that program is out there, USTA University. But it's education. But there needs to be a meeting of the minds, master plan on training coaches. But no, thanks for the thanks, and you're more than welcome. And I'll make it out to Brookhaven. I haven't been there in a while. Certainly, the pandemic. Yeah. I feel like I just haven't been traveling. I used to always travel, with the pandemic, I really haven't traveled so much. But all the best. Adios,
thank you, Steve. You're more than welcome.
Adios, amigos. Adios.
Muchas gracias.
You probably understand that. All right. Good night.
All right, Steve.
All right, all the
Good
best.
night. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, listeners, another marathon. 2 hours, 46 minutes, and 49 seconds. I see a clock over there. Anyway, that was great. Get up at 5 in the morning, work to 11. I think what he said, so many things, to take a notebook, write a few things down. But just driving a car around, it's, to me, it's music to listen to someone who is motivated to help the youth of America and around the world. All right. Adios, amigos. Good night. Thank you.